upper hand. Yeah, Badger, right? Merry Christmas. They are holding on. Hey, Sea Kraken. Alright, guys. I'm gonna have to drop the save here. I said we'll go until 1938. Save it up. Let's get ready for some space news, shall we? That was fun. I really like the DLC. I like the airplane designer. It's pretty damn cool. Let's switch this up to science and tech. I'm going to put on a video here, and then I'm going to go grab some lunch at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock lunch. Hey, it's lunchtime somewhere. Maybe in, like, Hawaii or something. Who is red down near the bottom west? I have no idea. I don't know. Let's see. Let's see. Ooh. Let's try this one. This one might be terrible audio, but let's see what we got. I always like to put on a movie here, like NASA public resource stuff here. Let's see.
April 1981. Columbia. The first space shuttle orbiter glides to a pinpoint landing at Edwards Air Force Base, California, ending its spectacular maiden flight. But unlike spacecraft that had gone before, Columbia would not be retired from service to become a museum piece.
I'll be back in a little bit.
Its future as a space transport vehicle had only begun. After its successful first flight, Columbia was ferried back to Kennedy Space Center. There, the process of turnaround was set in motion. There were system checkouts, minor tile repairs and replacements. An experiments package called OSTA-1 was placed in the payload bay. The package rests on a platform built by the European Space Agency. The Canadian-built remote manipulator system was installed. The system includes a 50-foot-long mechanical arm. In early August, Columbia was moved over to the Vehicle Assembly Building. Here it was mated to 2 new solid rocket boosters and an external fuel tank. 3 weeks later, it was rolled to the launch pad once again. Shuttle Flight 1 brought many firsts. Shuttle Flight 2 would bring another. The first time in the history of space flight that an attempt would be made to launch the same spacecraft a second time. During the next 3 weeks, launch preparation crews worked in 3 shifts, trying to meet the early October launch date. All had gone smoothly up to the point of loading the hypergolic fuels. That process had barely begun when nitrogen tetroxide was discovered spilling onto the orbiter. Approximately 15 to 20 gallons of the oxidizer had spilled down the side of the vehicle and into the propellant tank compartment of the nose section. It had also seeped between the orbiter's thermal protection system tiles and dissolved the bond holding the tiles on the spacecraft. Eventually, over 350 had to be removed. cause of the spill was failure of a quick disconnect valve to close. The valve could not close because of concentrations of iron nitrate in the head and hardening of lubrication in that area. With Columbia still on the launch pad, workers were able to gain access inside the nose compartment and replace soaked thermal blankets. They were also able to reach the soaked tiles. Therefore, it would not be necessary to move back to the orbiter processing facility for repairs. The tiles were put through a very speedy decontamination process to remove the oxidizer. Within 3 weeks after the spill, all 378 tiles had been removed, decontaminated, and rebonded. Launch was rescheduled for November 4th. But Columbia was not destined to return to space yet. Only 31 seconds away from ignition, the launch computer halted the countdown. The pressure in the liquid oxygen tank was below the predetermined limit necessary for liftoff. Meanwhile, controllers were also becoming increasingly concerned about the high oil pressure in 2 of the 3 auxiliary power units. After analyzing this problem further, they decided to scrub the launch for the day. The APUs are vital to Columbia's safe ascent and entry, for steering the engines during liftoff, controlling the aero surfaces during landing, and for lowering the landing gear. It was suspected that oil pressure rose in the units because the filters were clogged. The problem would have to be solved before another launch. Analysis revealed that a wax-like substance had formed in the oil to clog the filters. The substance was created by a chemical reaction between the oil and hydrazine fuel. The hydrazine seeped into the gearbox over the 7-month period since the APUs were last used and contaminated the oil. Although many thought technicians simply forgot to change the oil, normal maintenance procedures did not require it. Indeed, a key factor in shuttle's reusability is quick turnaround with minimum maintenance. The APUs were flushed with new lube oil. New filters were installed and fresh oil was added. Working on a very tight schedule, ground crews completed the work within a week. The shuttle was again ready to be launched. Astronauts Joe Engle and Richard Truly, commander and pilot for the second shuttle flight. Commander Engle, who joined NASA in 1966, was part of the backup crew for Apollo 14 and the first shuttle flight. 3 of his 16 X-15 flights went above 50 miles, qualifying him for astronaut rank, but he had not yet been in orbit. Nor had Richard Truly, pilot for this flight. Truly, who joined NASA in 1969, was capsule communicator for 3 Skylab missions and the Apollo-Soyuz mission. He was also part of the backup crew for Columbia's first flight. Both men had flown the shuttle before, in approach and landing tests at Dryden Flight Research Center in 1977. That was over 4 years ago. It was now 1981, November 12th to be exact. Richard Truly's 44th birthday.
Countdown now being conducted by the launch sequencers on board the orbiters. The SRB nozzles have been moved to start position. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7. We have go for main engine start. We have main engine start.
We got liftoff and looking good.
Roger, Columbia on the roll. Columbia, Houston, you're go at 40.
Roger, go at 40. Okay, looks like we got a good SRB step.
Roger, copy, SEP. Looks good to us.
Smooth as glass, Houston.
SRB SEP line.
Roger on the SEP.
And 103 converged.
Roger, got a 103. Okay, let's get a return status here. Fido.
Go.
Booster.
Go.
Prop.
Go.
Ecom.
We're go.
Eagle.
Go.
Okay, we're a go to proceed past negative return. Mark, negative return.
Roger that, sounds good.
Status, Fido.
Go.
Guidance.
Go.
Miko holding 3-4.
Yes, sir.
Booster.
Go.
Go at 8, Capcom. Columbia, Houston, you're go at 8.
Roger, go at 8. And it's solid as a rock, Ben. Okay, Houston, we got a good Miko.
Miko.
Roger, we copy. Roger, Miko.
And we got a Miko confirmed.
And confirm. Let's get off the tank now.
Got some IMU bites, flight. No problem. Ignore them.
Okay. Ignore the IMU bites, Capcom. Columbia, Houston, you can ignore the IMU bites.
Roger, Houston, and we've had ET SEP.
Roger on the SEP. Okay, let's get an Ohms 1 status here.
On the nominal, Delta V, 141.
Roger, Ohms 1 status. Booster.
Go.
Prop.
Go.
Ecom.
Go.
GNC.
Go.
Capcom, we're go for nominal Ohms 1. Go for APU off. Columbia, Houston, your go for nominal Ohms 1 for APU shutdown on time.
Okay, Dan, and we're maneuvering to attitude now.
Roger.
As Columbia continued toward orbit, the SRBs parachuted to a safe landing in the Atlantic Ocean, 160 miles downrange from the launch site. They were recovered and will be used again on a later shuttle flight. All orbital maneuvering system burns were successful, putting Columbia into a 138-mile orbit around the Earth. The payload bay doors were opened to deploy the heat-dissipating radiators and expose the OSTA experiments. So began the many tasks of the 5-day mission that lay ahead. However, not long after achieving orbit, at about 2 hours, 27 minutes mission elapsed time, the crew reported a high pH level, indicating alkalinity in one of Columbia's 3 fuel cells. The cells, which produce electricity and water for the spacecraft and crew, are essential for operating the many systems on board. Flight controllers, having dealt with almost every conceivable problem during flight simulations, immediately began working to find a real-time solution to this problem. But meanwhile, the cell's capacity to generate electricity continued to deteriorate. At about 5 hours mission elapsed time, it was decided to take the fuel cell offline and safe it, drain it of all its energy. This would prevent a potentially dangerous reaction from occurring that could damage the spacecraft. But according to a mission rule made pre-flight, the failure of a fuel cell would reduce the 125-hour nominal mission to a 54-hour minimum mission. A mission management meeting was held to decide whether to enforce or override the rule, whether to come home after 54 hours or stay up for the full duration. At a press conference on day 2 of the mission, Johnson Space Center Director Christopher Kraft explained why the decision was finally made to shorten the mission.
Well, we certainly don't have any other problems on board. I think that we think it's the prudent thing to do at this point in our test program. We think we can really get everything out of the mission that we have planned with the exception of time. So we just felt from a more prudent position, we had thought it out very carefully pre-flight that was the best thing for us to do.
Indeed, virtually everything was gotten out of the mission that was planned. All high-priority objectives were accomplished, and 90% of the overall objectives were completed, even though this was a test vehicle on a developmental flight cut short 71 hours. Of top priority were the remote manipulator system tests, completed on the morning of day 2. Sally Ride, first female capsule communicator, guided the astronauts through the tests.
And we've got a great picture from camera Delta of the arm going down into the cradle.
Hey, good. I tell you, the old eyeball looking out the window is the best alignment device, I think.
And now we got a picture of the PLT moving the arm.
The RMS, which is a major subsystem of the orbiter, is designed to deploy and retrieve satellites and other payloads in operational flights. Although the arm did not actually grapple a payload, the end effector was able to come within 6 inches of the target and maintain that position. 2 very important objectives of the test.
You can do that if you get it locked up.
Okay, we'll do that. And we've got a picture of the flag back, and we'll coordinate with ENCO.
Super. Incidentally, Houston, one of the things that has surprised me, at least, I didn't think it'd be this way, but we have not felt the RMS move the orbiter at all.
Okay, we copy that. Columbia, Houston, we've got the elbow camera.
Okay.
Hi, Mom.
In addition, all 5 operating modes of the system were evaluated, ranging from manual operation by the astronauts to a completely computer-controlled operation. The 3.5 hours of tests done on the arm proved highly successful. A real tribute to the designer, the National Research Council of Canada, and the builder, Spar Aerospace Limited. Canada absorbed all expenses related to research and development of this first system. The first package of scientific instruments to be flown on shuttle from NASA's Office of Space and Terrestrial Applications was designated OSTA-1. Although all the visual results are not yet available from the shuttle data takes, each experiment has already flown on aircraft or satellites. The shuttle imaging radar instrument used side-looking radar to create map-like images of the Earth's surface, showing relief. When supplemented with previously recorded Landsat satellite data, which could identify rocks and vegetation types, the composite revealed geological structures of a type which could possibly contain valuable mineral deposits, such as oil. With the OSTA experiments mounted in the payload bay of Space Shuttle Columbia at an altitude of 160 miles, worldwide data was obtained, proving that sensors previously used on costly individual satellites could now be flown in groups on shuttle, along with low-cost commercial-grade sensors that could only be flown on aircraft before. This will greatly reduce the cost of such experimentation in the future, putting it within reach of low-budget researchers. The ability to map Earth from space also demonstrated the potential for these instruments to map other planets, yet unexplored, even through dense cloud cover, as the shuttle imaging radar experiment was able to do. At the end of the second day, Mission Control had a special visitor.
Joe, Dick, this is Ronald Reagan.
Hello, Mr. President.
Let me just say, I'm sure you know how proud everyone down here is, and how this whole nation, I'm sure the world, but certainly America, has got its eyes and its heart on you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. We're awfully honored that we've got the opportunity to take part in this. We certainly do appreciate you taking the trouble to show all the people working on the space shuttle how much you care, and it makes us mighty proud.
Well, I care, and again, God bless you both, and all of us here are watching with great pride.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir, very much.
Thank you.
With all the Priority 1 objectives completed, the crew was ready to come home. Entry and landing would be their last test.
For 7 minutes, over.
Roger, and the port door is coming closed, and I want to at least get it close here and stop, and then we can talk.
Okay, that sounds good, Richard.
KL operators, assume all of you have checked the configuration. I'd like to come around the horn and get a go-no-go for the deorbit burn. Fido? Go. Guidance.
Go. He's still maneuvering with attitude.
Understand. DPS?
We're go, flight.
Command?
Go.
Ecom? Go. Eagle?
Go.
GNC?
Go.
Prop?
Go.
Booster?
Go.
Surgeon?
Go.
Inco?
Go.
Ops? FAO?
Go.
Payload?
Go.
And Arrow?
Go.
Okay, Capcom?
Columbia, Houston, we have a go for the deorbit burn. 3 minutes remaining in this pass.
Super. Thank you, Rick.
The landing, like the first mission, would be at Edwards Air Force Base in California. Entry on this mission would test the vehicle's response to maneuvers not performed before.
And the roll reversals will still be as updated.
At Columbia, Houston, the roll reversals will still be as briefed. There will be no significant effect on that early turn on the first roll reversal. Over.
Roger. Understand. Thanks, Rick.
The first maneuver, done at the beginning of the communications blackout, was executed at Mach 24, the fastest speed at which manual control had ever been exercised in winged aerodynamic flight. Close to 30 maneuvers took place as the shuttle sliced through the atmosphere at speeds from Mach 26 down to Mach 11. At about Mach 10.5, Columbia was expected to regain communications with Mission Control.
Columbia, Houston, through Buckhorn, configure AOS. You're about 25 miles south of ground track. Your nav is good. Your energy is good. We'd like you to check your TACAN, MLS, and radar altimeters on. Over.
Okay, Rick. Good to hear you. And we're showing 10.5 Mach and 165,000 feet now.
Roger, everything's looking good. Your energy is very good. The nav is good.
The first visual sighting of Columbia was aided by plumes from reaction control system jets, which were fired during a pitch
Out of
maneuver.
100,000 feet, Mach 3.6. You have positive seats. And we have a wind update for you and a weather update. You've got a very thin layer at 25,000. The winds airborne are as briefed, and on the ground 220, 18 knots, gusting to 24.
Good. Sounds like a good old Eddie day.
Columbia, Houston, we show you intercepting the hack, and a reminder you've got the strong winds out of the west. Now out of 38,000 feet.
Okay, thank you, Rick. And Rick, the maneuvers have been going very good. The bird is real solid. Good, solid bird all the way.
Well, we love hearing it.
Speed brake's coming close.
Roger, slightly below glide slope. You have a go for Autoland.
Okay, Rick, thank you, sir. Okay, Rick, we're in auto.
Check speed brake auto.
Okay, speed brake, body flap, auto, everything's auto. Thank you. Okay, 2,500 feet, speed brakes are closed. We're at 270 knots. Chase concurs.
Columbia is clear land, link at 23, wind 2108.
Okay. Gear's coming. 3 down.
One 100, 50, 30, 20, 10, 5, 3, touchdown. Nose gear 15. Ten, 5, 3, touchdown. Welcome home.
Thank you, Chase. Okay, Houston, Columbia has rolled to a stop, and we're getting into the post landing.
Okay, Joe, it's a great day for the Ace Moving Company. Welcome home.
Although this second shuttle flight only lasted 2.5 of the 5.5 days planned, it did answer some formidable questions. The orbiter is truly a reusable spacecraft that can be launched again and again. Instruments in the payload bay can map Earth's resources on a global scale. And the remote manipulator system has met this flight's test objectives. The completion of this flight marks the halfway point in the shuttle flight test program. Columbia's third flight, a mission of up to 7 days duration, is scheduled for the spring of 1982. The problems encountered so far are not unexpected during developmental flight testing. Indeed, it is only through such testing that confidence in the vehicle, its systems, and its flying characteristics can be built. The Columbia is a totally new concept in manned spaceflight. It needs very conservative, very comprehensive testing before it can become operational, making access to space something it's never been before. Routine.
Hey, fellas, it's just gonna be a second real quick. I didn't really get any time to make myself some food. I was checking on Remo. She's not feeling very well. Sweetheart, I know you have the stream up. I love you. I love you. Anyway, just give me a second. Just gonna woof this down real quick, and yeah, we'll go from there. Enjoy the music. Alrighty. Okay. So, welcome to Space News. I hope everybody had a good weekend. We did end up kind of streaming yesterday with the Dart impact. So you know what? Because we ended up streaming yesterday with the Dart impact, which was amazing, by the way, we will start with that. There are the things going on. Actually, a bunch of different things going on, but we'll start with that. There's a bunch of things going on, and you know what's crazy? There's a bunch of stuff. There's a lot of different things going on around the space program, even without, like, not even including what there's like Starship, which is crazy. So we should have a nice, good, healthy space news here today. So we'll start with the pictures. Speaking of the double asteroid redirect. So last night, NASA crashed an asteroid, or crashed a satellite about the size of a smart car into a double asteroid system. So what does that mean? Yeah. Here we go. Here comes your EJ explanation. A double asteroid system means you have a small asteroid orbiting around a big asteroid, and that small and big asteroid are orbiting around the sun. NASA, as a follow-up to their Deep Impact mission, I think it was in the 90s, basically wanted to hit the orbiting asteroid, which is called Dimorphos. It's orbiting around a bigger asteroid called Didymos. And Dimorphos is orbiting around it. And what they wanted to do is hit that thing with the Double Asteroid Redirect Satellite, DART. They wanted to hit it with it. And then they want to observe a little bit later how much its orbit has changed. The idea is to learn and understand how kinetic energy impacts would be able to divert asteroids if needed in the case of a, Armageddon scenario. Now, the DART mission did deploy a small CubeSat called Lucia Cube. And I'll tell you, it gave us some pictures that you guys might appreciate. There is impact on Dimorphos right there. It's also pretty insane because we had onboard cameras.
Oh my goodness.
They had onboard cameras on DART itself here. Let me see. That basically imaged this sucker. Oh, no, here. That basically imaged it all the way till impact. Watch. See that? And it got down here. It got down here pretty dang close. Like this last shot is really, really close to this. It's about 5 to 10 centimeters per pixel. So this is still a good ways away, but it got damn close to that asteroid. I love how you type in DART and the news companies come up first and NASA's footage comes up second. You notice how that said Yahoo News on the side? But we did get pictures from LuciaSat of DART impacting. So this is kind of third-person view for DART here. There was a CubeSat that took pictures, and the pictures were uploaded this morning. That is the impact. And now, over the next couple of months, they're going to observe telescopes from the Space Force and from NASA. NASA had James Webb pointed at this thing, amongst other things, and Hubble, from what I understand. Space Control Squadron observation groups, so Space Force Deltas, are going to observe this, and they're going to see how much the orbit was changed. If I'm understanding this right, it hit it in a way to cause it to deorbit. Believe it or not, it hit it so it would do the equivalent of a retrograde burn. So it should be it should have a shorter orbital period around Didymos now. I'm good twitching. We got past it. Anyway, so there's been a lot of memes out there to, oh, this one's for the dinosaurs. This is avenging this. This is avenging this. This is for the dinosaurs. We're avenging the dinosaurs. It's like, oh yeah, it's like Armageddon. Don't want to close my... Anyway, this was the funniest one. Yep. Did you see the Google Doodle for it? I'm Googling Google.com. Nope, I didn't.
Discovery, go and throttle up. Discovery, go and throttle up.
Lord. Damn, misclicked.
Discovery, go and throttle up.
Get it? Because Chris Rock.
Go at throttle up.
Goodness, man, thank you very much. That was a lot of subs. I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't know what to do with my hands. The stream's running real good. Felt like I was on a spaceship. Yeah, car's running real good. Stop that. I'm alright. I'm alright. I'm alright. What was I talking about? Oh, don't get me started on the horrible race on Sunday. What was William Byron doing, Bandit? Oh yeah, dart memes. Yeah, yeah. Keep the dinosaur's name out your mouth. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. The timing may have been a little bit off on that, though. That's terrible, Alex. Well, Iron. Well, this stream is derailed. Thank you. I don't know what to say. Yes. Yes, thank you. No. You want to take this higher. You want us to call the chief inspector. Yes, I would like that. You want us to call the chief inspector and bring him all the way down here. Kenneth! Iron, anyway. Okay, fun aside, thank you very much. I do appreciate it. That really helps. That really, really freaking helps. And I don't want to do the whole, oh, I'd like to thank my publicist who's a beautiful human being. No, thanks, man. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. This is what NASCAR thought of it. William Byron was fined 50 G's and docked 25 points for spinning Denny Hamlin under caution. Ty Gibbs fined 75 G's and team loses 25 owner points for door slamming Ty Dillon on the pit road. What a cluster that race is, dude. TMS sucks. That track is terrible. Oh my goodness. That's one of my favorite flicks, Infinite. Yeah. Wow. Anyway. So yeah, that's what's going on with Dart. The next thing that is teed up here is SLS did roll back to the VAB. Here's a picture of it. It made it into the VAB this morning ahead of Hurricane Ian. Hurricane Ian was a tropical. Iron, I can't even talk straight. Thanks for that. I need more coffee. All right. Dude, that really messed me up. How does that still happen? I should be expecting this by... Not expecting, that's not the right word at all. I still get flustered from that. 10 years in, it still screws with me. Bring it in. Hey, screw you, buddy. Can I finish? Please, can I finish? Okay, I'm finished. All right, so NASA did roll SLS back into the VAB ahead of Hurricane Ian. Tropical Depression 9 has become a hurricane and is expected in some models to get up to a Category 4 hurricane. And that just on a side note, just if you're in Florida, please be safe. I mean, you guys know. You don't need some bum from the Northeast to tell you about your own weather. I get it. But I did live there for a little while, so I do know. Just don't be an idiot. I mean, you guys know that. Just be safe, all right? As if not enough bad juju could come to SLS, there also was a fire as they rolled it back into the VAB. I love what you do and wanted to support. Thanks, Iron. I appreciate it. Florida man don't care. Yep, that's right. But hey, be safe. All right. The main model is supposed to hit directly into Bradenton where the Freedom Factory is. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, Bandit, the thing is that Cleater paid for those concrete and steel lights on the track. I think he'll be okay. I think he'll be fine. Track has a very low coefficient of drag from an axial flow perspective. Very low coefficient of drag. Seriously. Latest track and estimates. Let me see. Let me take a look here. Them new bleachers though. They'll be all right, Tyrone. They'll be fine. I'm serious. The track has a really low coefficient of drag. Even with the bleachers, the bleachers are hollow, guys. It goes right through it. The airflow goes right through the bleachers. That's why they're hollow. He did ask. No, I don't know if he asked about it in the presser. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, here's the track. The northwest part of Cuba just got wrecked. Pretty bad. It did elevate, and it's supposed to elevate again when it gets into the warm water here. Warm water with hurricanes is no good. So now the hurricane doesn't hit direct center over the Space Coast, but it comes pretty damn close. In most models, the hurricane basically gets to Orlando, just takes a dump, and then goes north in some way, shape, or form. And then I was actually reading a little bit more about this. There is a pressure front right here. I forget if it's a warm or a cold front. I think it's a warm front. And that actually is going to keep the hurricane here, and the storms are just going to dump right here. At least that's a projected model. I'm not 100% sure on that. It's headed right over you. Rocket, be safe, man, okay? Oh, dear. That is going to dump a lot of rain. Now, I wanted to say some things about SLS just on a side note. See, it's not going to get the Space Coast exactly, but it's going to be pretty close. You got to be careful from that. Now, the other thing to kind of take into account here is that the SLS is a little bit stronger than what you might think. It's a little stronger than what you guys think. The reason why NASA was holding back on it, the reason why NASA was holding back on that for the longest time, it was because the rocket and the rocket and the launch umbilical tower can take some pretty high sustained winds. It can't take a direct hit. It can take kind of a glancing hit, but I guess we were too close to a direct hit here for my keys. We were too close to a direct hit to constitute leaving it out on the pad. So they did roll it back. And they are going to start charging the batteries for the flight termination system, which is good. That'll give us an opportunity for a nice clean launch. They basically got to check out the vehicle again now that they rolled it back. They got to check it out again, and we should be good to launch with SLS sometime in the future. I don't know, give it like a month maybe, depending on the windows for the moon. There aren't many opportunities for a long duration mission in November, but some launch is better than no launch. Okay, Bone Sister. Yep. Are you going to go down to Florida then in October? Don't know. Maybe. The rollback decision was a just-in-time decision. Software folks know this. Within engineering, you don't make a decision until you know or last chance. Yep. Was there any other vehicles in the VAB where the fire started, or it's just SLS? The fire was in a part of High Bay 3 that was not near the rocket and was totally isolated and was put out within a couple of minutes, Flecken. It did not affect anything else. Yep. Yeah, November is just, yeah, it's just a bad window. But hey, if we have to do a short duration mission, that's better than nothing. I mean, I'd prefer the long duration, but it is what it is. Give me 1 second. All right. Please enjoy this car meme that I'm sure you would love. Oh. Okay. Yep. Yeah, in terms of the VAB, guys, the VAB is designed to withstand winds like that. Believe it or not, the VAB has blowout panels. If you look at an interior shot of the VAB, if you look at an interior shot of the VAB, you'll see some lighter panels to allow light to come in the transfer aisle. Here's a good picture of it with an Orion test article. These are blowout panels. Those are designed to, if there's high pressure outside or inside, they're designed to basically just separate. The reason why is because believe it or not, now we're talking about aerodynamics. Okay. Spoiler alert. Houses are not very aerodynamic because they're generally a static object, right? Now the VAB, they knew with those big flat fronts on it, right, that it's going to have a lot of dynamic pressure building up on the sides of the building, just like a rocket going up into space. Same idea. You know, they're going to have a lot of dynamic pressure. So if the pressure gets too big on the inside or the outside, the panels will blow out and the air will go through the VAB. The VAB is very cavernous. It was built like this on purpose. Even the parts where there's structure, it's still all nice and open. So if one of these panels do go and the wind starts blowing through here, it'll just blow right through the VAB and go out the other side. It's built like that on purpose. So when the VAB does have problems, like if a hurricane hits it, it's just designed to go, the air is just designed to go right through and come out the other side. They have blowout panels on it on purpose. So it's pretty damn safe inside of the VAB, even in a high category hurricane. This ain't the first rodeo for NASA. There have been shuttle stacks sitting inside of the VAB with a huge hurricane outside, and the VAB just don't care. Yeah, the VAB can take a direct hit from a Category 3, which is pretty damn impressive for the time. Category 4 and 5, that's when you're going to start to have problems. That's when those blowout panels are really going to start to do their thing. But even then, should be okay. All right. Anyway, so that's what's going on with SLS. It should be okay. It is another delay. It does kind of suck, but it is what it is. Anyway, here's some good news. So the Starlink mission launched off the other day, and I actually saw it. I saw the Starlink mission that went up the other night. I saw it from my house, which is actually pretty dang cool. But, you know, I took a picture of it, but I'll never take a picture. There's a lot of people that saw the second stage. A lot of people saw the second stage go up the East Coast because the lighting conditions were good. But I think out of all the pictures, I think I may have found the best one. And this one was posted by your boy right there. And it is a picture from the fairing, from one of the Starlink fairings, with the second stage exhaust plume up here, and the first stage doing supersonic retropropulsion down at the bottom. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty freaking cool. Not gonna lie to you. Yeah. I don't know, T-Man. A fast one. Rooftop launch cam when? Yeah, right? I'll ask my neighbors about it because that camera's basically going to be pointing into their backyard, Aqualex. But I'll ask him about it and we'll see what we can do. There's got to be video. Elon only posted this. Couple of cool things to note. You can see the reaction control system thrusters for orientation for the fairing with the wiring. You see it goes right there. The Starlink fairings also don't have They don't have any insulation on there. See all these pinholes right here? Those are all points to mount insulation inside of the fairings. Starling fairings don't have that. That's not anything that we didn't know. And then the third thing is that you can see parachutes right there. See the parafoil? Parachutes packed on the fairing. Those are COPVs. That's correct. It looks like they might have additional COPVs here on the side, but I'm not 100% sure what that is exactly. But yeah, really, really cool. That's the first stage, doing supersonic retropropulsion, my favorite. That's the entry burn. And then the second stage, if you could make this picture bigger, is up there. You could see the plume expansion from the second stage, which is what was backlit, and it was a great picture. That is really, really freaking cool. Yeah, not every day you get to see a fairing camera like that. And it's pretty cool that Elon shared it, to be honest with you. So what's the probability of SLS or Starship launching first? Not 100%, Dink. Are they recovering the fairings yet? Every fairing gets recovered, Matt. The fairings nowadays on Falcon 9 don't even get caught by drone ships anymore. Or not drone ships. They don't even get caught by the catcher ships. What SpaceX found was a simpler way to do things is to literally just waterproof the fairing. Yeah, they made the fairings float. So the fairings just go down and they gently land on the water, and then they have a ship with a giant net that they slide in underneath the fairing, pick the fairing up and out. Yeah. Yeah, they've been landing. Dude, there are some fairings that have been used like 4 or 5 times, which is crazy. And actually, we were talking about this the other day. I mean, you know what? This reminded me. So check this out. You want to see something? A little bit of word on the fairing here. You'd think that the fairing, they might sink. How are those things even buoyant? Blah, 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 blah. Take a look. You want to see how light this thing is? Look at it floating in the water. Pretty crazy, right? Now, once again, this is not the fairing that we saw from the picture. This one has insulation built into it. See all that? See how light that thing actually is? The fairings are really, 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 really light. This is part of the reason why they don't necessarily need a thermal protection system. Because they're so ridiculously light, and they're a very big shape for how light it is. They have a very, very low ballistic coefficient. Low ballistic coefficient. So basically it's super, super light, and it's super, super giant, like a wing. So all the fairing needs is a small parachute, and it can literally just fly around. You can parafoil around, and that coupled with the RCS bring the fairings right back down near the ships. What's that latching mechanism? 1, 2, 3. That's where it connects to the other fairing. With SpaceX fairing and Rocket Lab to test firing a dunked engine, I wonder if salt water isn't as bad as originally thought. Gotta prove it with numbers, MotoKid. I'm pretty sure it's bad for it, but yeah. Rocket guy, is that the, Yeah, it is. Here, check this out, dudes. Yeah. SpaceX been reusing the fairings for a long time. Oh, it's so ridiculous. No, Flykin, because it's so light. Nope, nope. So that must mean it has relatively high G load on reentry? No. Actually, it's really, really low, Bill. Really, really low. Because it doesn't have a lot of inertia coming back down, believe it or not. The aerodynamic forces applied to the vehicle, they don't cancel out gravity, but they negate it. And that's because of the ballistic coefficient. It does go through reentry, don't get me wrong. But yeah, you do get some ionization happening there. You could see it right there, but it's not that bad. My favorite is it coming through the fairing vents. It's coming through the fairing vents and making a lot of turbulent air. And there is some ablation happening on the nose cone of the fairing. You could see it from those sparks right there. In Minecraft, Boone. Yep. Well, me? Yep. And then, yeah, they try to catch them, and it was just better to have them go into the water, which is pretty cool. Anyway, yeah, that's bit on fairings, dude. You know, that's how they get that fairing footage. It's pretty crazy. And the fairings float very, very well. So, anyway, switching gears back over to the Cape, Relativity's posted these pictures of their Terran 1 rocket. They've taken the Terran 1 rocket off of the pad, which is also kind of working as a test stand for them. And they put it back into their hangar in preparation for the Hurricane as well. Trevor took these pictures, which is pretty cool. What are fairings made out of? Fairings can be made out of a lot of different things. Some of them are made out of all aluminum. Some of them are made out of carbon fiber. Some fairings are made out of steel. Astra's fairings are made out of steel and were. That rocket doesn't exist anymore. They're made out of just all different types of things, usually an exotic metal, but SpaceX's fairings, and don't get me wrong, ULA's fairings are like this too, except for the Atlas 400 series. Atlas 400 series fairings are aluminum, but most modern rockets use a carbon fiber aluminum honeycomb structure. So that's what SpaceX's fairings are. It's basically, think like an aluminum grid, an aluminum honeycomb, like that's about this thick, and you know, it's just bunch of hexagons just drilled into aluminum, right? And then on either side of that, you have carbon fiber, and then they take that and they wind the carbon fiber around the aluminum, and on the inside and on the outside, and then they put it in an autoclave, and then they bake it. What I'm trying to tell you is fairings are built like a layered cake. It's the industrial version of making a layered cake. Anybody that bakes knows what I'm talking about. No, not that type of baking. That's different. So yeah, the end result is with the aluminum honeycomb and the carbon fiber on top, you get a very, very lightweight design. That's why the fairings float really well. Can we eat the fairing? I wouldn't. The RS-1 flight was delayed to mid-October. Thanks, Cor. What's interesting is, yes, fairings are smooth. Fairings are very smooth to make it aerodynamic, but when you look at that ionization, that's laminar flow coming over the top of the fairing. If you look back, it's going to be super smooth for it to be, it's got to be super smooth for it to be laminar. If I can try again. try again. Nope. No. You can get laminar flow with a blunt shape. Look at the space shuttle. No. What's going on is that there's a very high pressure pocket in front of the fairing. And here, let me show you. All right, so check this out. So you have your fairing, and we're looking at the fairing from the front. Okay, so the nose cone of the fairing is like right here. And we're looking at the nose. The fairing looks like this in reality, right? Right, it looks like that, more or less. If you're looking at it from the front here, and that's 3/4, right? What's going on is air is coming in like this. Air is coming in like that, and a lot of air builds up right here. Right there. The compression, the air compresses right there, and it tries to go this way. And what happens is the other air goes around it, and that generates heat. What you're seeing here is the air going around like that. Because you're going to get a lot of high pressure building up right there. Does that make sense? It's not laminar flow. It's not laminar flow. It's very turbulent, believe it or not, because air doesn't like to turn. Even at hypersonic speeds, air does not like turning. That really causes a lot of turbulent air. It looks really smooth coming off of it, but you are still making a lot of high pressure right here. You're making a lot of high pressure here, and then you have a lot of extremely low pressure here. Look at there's a little bit of high pressure here, but the low pressure that's being made is like that. See the ratio of lower pressure to higher pressure right here? That's why the fairings float. That's why they float. They make tons of drag. They make a ton of drag. And that coupled with being really light, you know, makes them able to basically just parachute back down. See, it looks like a dunce cap right here. But yeah, that should, if that makes a little bit more sense. What you're seeing here from the camera is you're seeing this. But the fact that it's curving back in on itself and colliding right here, it'll show you that low pressure pocket. Let's go back over here. Let me reopen that. Here. See? It's colliding in on itself right there. See it's moving around? That's very turbulent air. I get it. It looks like laminar, but that's not laminar. No. Yeah, I mean, this should help. Yeah, I mean, Aqualex, this will work too. Yeah, see what I'm talking about? The amount of high pressure versus the amount of low pressure. That ratio is how much drag you make. I mean, that's the, don't get me wrong, if you're into aerodynamics, it is way more complicated than that. I know it's way more complicated than that, just in case anybody gets on my case. I'm trying to keep it simple. Why are some people saying SpaceX should be nationalized though? Now, what? Forge, I don't know. And frankly, if the people that are saying that, I would disregard their opinions, because that's ridiculous. Yeah. I don't even care who's saying that. You don't need to tell me. I know they're wrong. And that person is crazy. And they probably, don't get me wrong, they probably have some really nice contrived argument as to why it should be, but it's based off of their own personal judgment and not anything else. But they try to interject their personal judgment into their analysis, making them look stupid in the process. Believe me, takes one to know one. I do that all the time. Well, I try not to do that, but it's still it happens. Mr. $30 billion over here. Yeah, believe me. Yeah, I don't even care who said that. I don't even want to know. I don't even want to tell their name. I don't care. They're wrong. I mean, admit you're wrong. It's good to learn the truth. Yeah, I mean, Flakin, you're trying, but aerodynamics is complicated, dude. You can't just learn You can't just learn a little bit of catchphrases here and there, right? Learn a little bit of terminology and then know what's going on. That takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time and practice, man. Ugh. Yeah. So, yeah, you can't just climb in the ring with Ali because you think you can box. He knows I can box. Anyway, yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, did you see the visualization, Flakin, of like, there's not a lot of high pressure being generated, and there's a crazy amount of low pressure being generated, right? That's, the fairings make insane drag. They're despite being a pretty aerodynamic shape, but when they're doing a belly flop, so to speak, they're not very aerodynamic. That's a lot of surface area being exposed to laminar flow, right? And the more the air gets disturbed when a fluid body passes through it, right? The more drag you're going to make. But then again, there are ways to mitigate that too. Okay. Forge, I want you to whisper me whoever thinks that, just so I can laugh at them in my spare time. Yeah. If you could just whisper that to me so I can laugh completely in their face, that'd be great. Anyway, SLS and them. Hey, Predominant. SLS and them being a private company is what allows us to have Falcon 9 and Starship. Them being a private company and having Falcon 9 and Starship is why we have SLS. I mean, Aqualex, it's a theory that I have, not to interject personal opinion, but it's a theory that I have. I want SpaceX to be at the top of their game, and I want NASA to be at the top of their game. In order to be the most sustainable forward, i.e., a program doesn't get canceled, or, you have something like the dot-com era where everybody just pulled out of the commercial satellite launch market all at once because it wasn't economically viable, right? I think the best way forward is to do both of those things, right? Because if you put all your eggs into the commercial basket, not very sustainable. I mean, it could work. The competition between competition between commercial, commercial spaceflight companies is great. That's good. That's what we want. But there has to be some overcapping regulation there. And the overcapping regulation is NASA. NASA and scientific rockets, which is, like I said, I've said this many times. I want NASA to be like Apollo level programs, like funding, even if it is more expensive to the people that don't understand what a cost benefit analysis does. And what a total cost involved analysis is. SLS might even appear more expensive, and the Apollo program might appear more expensive. So, spoiler alert, it's not. And second of all, having that, even if it is more expensive, having a full, healthy, and robust in-house government space program supplemented by a healthy commercial market is what's going to give you the most sustainable way forward. There's no way that doesn't happen. Like, well, not no way. There is plenty of ways that there's plenty of ways that won't happen. But I think that is the most sustainable way forward, which is why I'll always argue for more funding for NASA, more comprehensive programs for SLS, more comprehensive science programs, more everything. But at the same time, I also want SpaceX to do very good. It is imperative that they do very good, because if they don't and they fold, you have just the government being able to get access into space again with people. You want to go back to that? The last time they were the only ones that had access to low Earth orbit for crews, we had the 30-year stagnation of the program. Don't want that. Nope, don't want that either. We need to fire on all cylinders if we want space to be the most sustainable. Oh, no problem. The shuttle was pretty damn cool. Well, Josh, the shuttle was supposed to flourish the commercial market. True story. NASA did contract out the shuttle to launch commercial missions. Yeah, NASA became a launch provider for a good amount of time in the 80s until Challenger. They were launching stuff for companies. NASA was launching payloads into orbit for companies because they had the cheapest way to do it, because they kind of cornered the market inadvertently, but that's another story. Is Crew 5 still on track? It is moved around a little bit because of the hurricane. So yeah, I mean, like I said, these people that, oh, nationalized space, that's just going to lead to stagnation. And like, once again, I have several historical examples to back that up. Like, I don't know what more proof people would want, you know what I'm saying? But I mean, you know, people like to believe what they want to believe. It's fine. It is what it is. Anyway, I don't want to keep going on too much of a down note here. So here, have this. Headphone users, this might get loud. It's possible that it could get loud. I actually haven't listened to this video. I'm just going to judge by that first second that we listened to that it's probably going to get loud. You've been warned. You've been warned. Send it. Tink. That's nice. Oh, that's so cool. Hands. Don't need them, bro. Don't need them. Oh, that's pretty freaking sweet. Tink. Bye-bye. So, a couple of cool things. So this is from the L-91 launch, the last Delta IV Heavy to launch out of Vandenberg Air Force Base ever. It sucks, but it was a really awesome launch. First of all, I'd like to point out that Delta launched without any problems, literally on the first try, which is annoying because it usually doesn't do that, and Delta is finally proving its reliability literally while it's on the way out. That does kind of suck, but it is what it is. You see the 3D video shot of the flame trench and pan to the rocket in the air. I literally have that teed up next, Rocket Guy. I wanted to get into this a little bit. So, you know, SLS is worried about hydrogen leaks. They were worried about the hydrogen leaks. Oh, they're worried about the hydrogen leaks. What? Well, what do hydrogen leaks do? What does that cause? It causes stuff like that. See that right there? Yeah, see how the whole rocket is just literally on fire? Yeah, that's what hydrogen leaks do. Now, I know what the next question coming is. The next question coming is, well, why is it okay if Delta IV does that and not SLS? Well, one, it was designed to do that. It was designed to catch on fire like this. They took that into account when they did this. Now, why did they take that into account? Well, that leads me to the second part of this, where we watch the vehicle taking off. Guys, notice anything interesting about this? The outside of the nozzle is on fire. Anybody else notice that? The outside of the nozzle, right there, 3 spots, is on fire. Why? Well, the reason why Delta IV was designed to be able to fireball itself right at liftoff is because it's an open cycle hydrolox engine. Open cycle, meaning the hydrogen gets dumped overboard that's used to turn the turbines. See that right there? See the exhaust? That's why Delta IV catches on fire, because when you go to fire up the engines, it literally makes a hydrogen leak. It shoots gaseous hydrogen, unburnt hydrogen, basically out the side, and that's what causes that fireball. Now, to help mitigate that problem, if you notice this, the fireball only happens on one side. The workaround for this, to make sure that the whole thing doesn't get engulfed in a gigantic fireball when it lights off, is sequenced ignition. They fire this engine first, and then those two right after. So it's 1, 2, 3. That's why you only get a fireball over there. And by the time this engine is turned on, the other two ignite, and you don't get as big of a fireball over there. That, and it creates a vacuum that starts pulling all the flames right back down. That's why, if you notice, right when it lifts off, Delta's slightly tilted. It's slightly tilted over that way. Notice that? See? It's slightly tilted to the left. Just very, very subtly. Don't get me wrong, the aerodynamics help even everything out. But yeah, right at liftoff, most rockets have a period of instability. Aerodynamic instability. Long story short, you're not going fast enough for it to matter. Falcon 9 has this a lot when it comes back down and lands. That's why sometimes when Falcon lands, it kind of skitches around a little bit, because rockets are very aerodynamically unstable when you're not going fast enough for the air to do anything. That's why Delta kind of comes off the pad a little crooked. See? One last thing to note is, once again, these RS-68As are an open cycle engine. They are an open cycle engine. So you're not using the fuel to cool the nozzle. So if you look at these flames, they're pretty dang clear, but the flames do have a little bit of fuzziness to them, meaning that they're running slightly on the hydrogen rich side to keep the whole thing cool. Thirdly, and last but not least, is that if you look at the RS-68 engine blankets, SLS has the same ones. Yeah, you're welcome. See? Same thermal blankets. I've played re-entry before, Skunk. Yep. How can they be sure that the fire won't damage the SRBs in the case of Delta IV medium? The fireball isn't big enough, Forge, to cause any problems. That and SRBs are steel cased for Delta IV medium. They were a steel casing, so yeah, you don't need steel casing. You ain't gonna break that. Those some weird mock diamonds look like mock lines. Well, Builder, there's another thing. The exhaust coming from the liquid oxygen gas generator and the liquid hydrogen gas generator are perturbing the flow on both sides. That's why you have these defined lines here on both sides. Yeah. It's perturbing the flow a little bit. Pretty cool, huh? Are there plans to reuse RS-68As on SLS? They perform better than RS-25s, no? They were going to do that. And then they decided to human rate SLS. Yeah. The original SLS is derived from a rocket called Ares 5, MotoKid. Ares 5 was going to have 5 RS-68s in the first stage and only be used to launch cargo into space. What they were going to do is use Ares 1, which was a single 5 segment with basically the equivalent of a Delta 4 upper stage attached to the top with a J2 engine on it. That rocket engine that we bid on Gov auctions, yeah, that's Ares 1's upper stage. I didn't get it. Oops. I didn't get it. Sorry. Yeah, it went for a lot more money than I can afford. Oh well. So when they wanted to eventually switch Ares to human rating to try and not build 2 launch vehicles, try and not build Ares 1 and Ares 5, they came up with, well, RS-68s aren't crew rated. They're not really designed to launch people. They're not a crew rated rocket. That, and they were operating 5 of them in very close proximity. So the design changes that you would have made to an RS-68 basically would be just make it into a shuttle engine. So they came up with the idea to save costs, to use shuttle engines on SLS instead. And because of the better performance of the shuttle engines in terms of efficiency, you only needed 4 instead of 5. And then after that, they basically started making closed cycle RS-68s. Yeah, Aerojet Rocketdyne is making closed cycle RS-68s right now. They're called RS-25Es. Now, people that know what I mean know that that's not going to make any sense. RS-25E, the E variant, is basically an expendable version of an RS-25. But what a lot of people don't know is that its combustion chamber is manufactured the same way that an RS-68 is. Its combustion chamber, its expendable power heads, everything is built to be expendable, a la RS-68. It is not open cycle like an RS-68 to keep that human rating, but the RS-25E is basically an RS-68 in shuttle engine form. It's basically a closed cycle RS-68. It's a fuel-rich stage combustion cycle RS-68. So it kind of is going, but it's kind of not. Aerojet Rocketdyne is reusing the tooling from the RS-68 because the RS-68 is a lot newer of a design than the RS-25. The RS-25 dates back to the mid-70s because the shuttle, right? So they used all the manufacturing techniques from the RS-68 they're using all the manufacturing techniques from the RS-68 and the RS-68A to make these RS-25Es. Hey, that's what's going on. Yeah, we saw it, Roman. Pretty cool, huh? First stage supersonic retro propulsion. Supersonic retro propulsion. Supersonic retro propulsion. Yeah. Now, personally, MotoKid, I mean, you know me. You've heard me rant before. I don't need to say it. I think Constellation was a better idea. Personally, I think Constellation was a better idea. Some people agree with that. Some people don't. Whatever. It is what it is. Constellation was much more comprehensive and gave us a nice, clear, defined path to satisfy stakeholder expectations of going back, replacing the shuttle, going back to the moon, and going to Mars in the 2030s on a somewhat reasonable timeline. And it was a much more defined roadmap than SLS, which has been my problem with the SLS program for a long time. What does it do? What does it do? Okay, Block 1 can put a capsule around the moon. Okay, great, good. Apollo 8 did that in 1968. That's okay, good. Can you land on the moon? No, you can't land on the moon. Okay. So what is this rocket supposed to do again? I've always called for SLS to be much more comprehensive, like Constellation. It needs a better upper stage. You need to be able to, SLS needs to be able to have the capability to take a lander to the to rectilinear halo orbit and then eventually down to the surface in one Block 1B launch. It needs to be able to do exactly what Starship can do to get people to the surface of the moon. NASA needs to match SpaceX's capability. And Congress agrees with me on that one. That's why they're fielding 2 landers. Whatever happened to the old Ares Mars transfer vehicle design? I think it's shelved for now, but I think they plan on doing it in the future. SLS looks a lot like this, more like this than Ares 5. Oh yeah, the NLS. NLS was a great idea. Yeah. They pigeonholed themselves into the same architectural issues as with the space shuttle. Gotta, when all you have is a semi, it's going to cost a lot more to go to the movies. Yeah, yep. Whatever happened to that old Ares Mars transfer vehicle? What was that called? MTV is what it's called. I want my MTV. Mars transfer vehicle. Yeah, Barrel, I'm with you on that one. And Ares 5 would have been a great vehicle to build that with. Yeah. Space programs need 4 things: funding, objectives, roadmap, timeline. Constellation gave us the roadmap, objectives, and timeline, but no funding. SLS gave us a roadmap and funding, but no objectives and no timeline. So SLS is just a crappier version of Constellation. Kind of sucks. Constellation would have been great, dude. It's a great architecture. Dude, MotoKid, it is so good. I still... Nice, Roger. I still say that bringing back Ares 1 to this day, bringing back Ares 1 would be a great idea. I will still say that to this day. But the upper stage might, probably do something a little bit different with the upper stage. No J2. I mean, even then, I would still like if the J2 made it back. Liberty would have been better. Dude, if we want to do the whole sustainable European space nonsense that we like to... That's not nonsense. That's not a good way to say it. I don't mean to piss in our European bros cornflakes, you know what I'm saying? Do you guys eat cornflakes over there? That probably doesn't make any sense. I don't mean to rain on your parade. On that note, bring back Venture Star. You'll get no argument from me, Admena. You do? Okay, cool. I don't know, man. What you might call it like silly nanny flakes or whatever. I don't know, dude. You already pissed. No, I'm not mad. Like, come to terms with Constellation not doing its thing. But oh, cool. Snackless, that's neat, man. Mamma mia, what's that? Oh yeah, Hurricane, dude, yeah. I have a new food name to share on the weekend. Nice. Digestive flakes. Oh yes, a pitted bran. Yes. Oh yeah. No. I've been trying not to rag on our British buddies as much as I normally do because it's kind of disrespectful right now. I'm trying not to do it. It's tough, but I've been trying my best. The French though, you guys, your flag is the color of cheese. French people are like. Yeah, we. Anyway, the official breakfast of the London Silly Nannies. Yeah. Cajun, what's that? I'm trying to go through. Like 4 or 5 people told me to see last all at the same time, Pigzig. Oh, nice, Cajun. That's cool. With all the redundancy for landers, do you think they should have redundancy for getting out to the moon? Yes. Pigzig, I will say that the most redundant thing, the best sustainable way forward. Now, keep in mind, I will fully admit that the most sustainable way forward is not the most cost-effective way to do things. Full stop. This is the most expensive way, but it's also the most sustainable way. NASA needs to be able to rival anything that SpaceX can do, and then some. I'm not talking about NASA using SpaceX's lander to get down to the surface. I'm talking about NASA having a wholly redundant way to get to the moon involving just SLS. And that needs to be able to match Starship's ability to get people to the surface of the moon as well. If Starship can do the whole orbital refuel depot thing, HLS, Starship thing out to the moon and back, and SpaceX has the ability to send people from the surface to the moon, from the surface of the Earth to the surface of the moon and back, NASA should have a wholly redundant way to do that. That's the most sustainable way forward. I'm not going to sit here and say that that's not going to cost a lot of money, but it is. But yeah, I mean, MotoKid, that's part of the reason why I still say Constellation they should go back to using Constellation. They should go back to that architecture. Like now, if they're going to transition to SLS Block 1B in the future, they should take the new ML1, the one that SLS is sitting on right now, and retool it for a single stick launch vehicle with a cryogenic upper stage designed to launch Orion. Orion's already qualified to do something like this because it can launch on SLS. The launch abort system is already qualified. The first stage boosters are already, the 5-segment boosters, already qualified. All you got to do is design an upper stage. Now, before people say, oh, yeah, you're going to design an upper stage, like, that's easy to do. Well, they're doing it right now with SLS. They're doing it right now with the EUS. They're designing it right now. Don't say that you can't do another upper stage. Of course you can. And having NASA be able to have ability redundant to Falcon 9 and redundant to Atlas V and Starliner, right, is the best, most sustainable way forward. People can say that I'm wrong. You can say that you can disagree with me, but it is. It's true. Why not have both Constellation and SLS? That's a little bit of redundancy, Airborne, but you could take SLS and you could take the Artemis program and retool it to be a better version of Constellation at this point. I personally love the concept of Dragon meeting with HLS in low Earth orbit and then going out to the moon. Yeah, that's what I mean, Snagless. SpaceX has a viable pathway to get to the surface of the moon with Falcon 9 and Starship. NASA needs to be able to match that capability, or else we are not looking at the most sustainable future in space. We're looking at a future where SpaceX corners the market and creates stagnation. You could say I'm wrong, but that's how capitalism do. You need to have some regulatory oversight, and in this particular regard, the regulatory oversight is NASA. In the same way that FedEx and the post office exist. Why the heck does the post office exist if FedEx exists? They literally do the same thing, right? Nope. The post office does a lot more things than just deliver your mail. It's kind of a resource center for, your local town. That's really, really important. NASA rockets can provide science, so they don't theoretically have a market, just like the post office theoretically doesn't have a market. Does that mean that they can't compete for commercial? No. The Postal Service competes with FedEx and UPS all the time in terms of price. If it fits, you ships. Remember, that became a meme. That's the post office. And before you say, oh, well, that's just the US, every single country has a federated mail system. Every single one of them. There's no country that just relies on commercial. No one. No one does that. See what I'm talking about? That's the most sustainable way forward. I put about a decade of thought and analysis into this opinion. Damn, you have a point. The SLS Orion launch escape system can get Orion away from those solids already, so the parachute burn through problems are already solved. Aqualux, I've always said that Ares 1 parachute problems were bullcrap. That was bupkis. That was terrible. The only reason we even heard about it is because that was the last study that was conducted right before Ares 1 got canceled. If Orion can escape from SLS, it can't escape from Ares 1? What? That makes no sense. That makes no sense whatsoever. It's because it was bullcrap. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Air Force study was bullcrap. What I'm saying is that was just a problem that was unsolved at the time that has since been solved with the upgraded launch abort system. The post office is not state-owned in the Netherlands. Well, why don't you guys just go over there to your lake or your windmill or whatever and just be weird, all right? You guys can just go be weird over there. Huh. Oh, passing, it looks like they're going to British Leyland themselves. That's funny. Anyway. That's the most sustainable way forward. I'm not going to sit here and say that doesn't cost money. It's going to cost money, but it's the most sustainable way forward in space. You want less sustainable ways? Listen to the SpaceX fanboys. You want even more less sustainable ways? Listen to the bonehead that said that SpaceX should be nationalized. Anyway, here's Flame Trench Cam. Hey, Delta 4. I agree, Rocket. Well, Rocket, the way I see it is that if we're going to Moon to Mars has called for stakeholder expectations to build transfer vehicles in low Earth orbit to be able to move people to the moon. Orion's only ride into space at this point is on top of an SLS in a Block 1 format. You mean to tell me we're launching an SLS just to put Orion into low Earth orbit to get to a transfer vehicle that's in low Earth orbit? No, that's not happening. No. We're going to need the ability to take Orion and put it into low Earth orbit by itself. Preferably a redundant capability would be good. So Ares 1, basically. NASA operates on supply and demand, albeit differently than commercial. Yep. Yep. This was footage from L70 or L91. This one didn't have any audio, but also Delta. Delta! Pretty sweet. Okay, by popular demand, here's Tori Bruno's secret ultra favorite camera. Is this... Nope, that's a ball. Very cool for laminar flow in understanding it. Do we have audio? Please tell me we have audio. Oh yeah. Click. Oh, where was the headphone warning? Oh, sorry, my bad. That's nice, isn't it? Yeah, that's a nice one there, mate. Yeah. I only want something around, boys. Oh, why is it so beautiful? Because Delta is Chad tier engineering. Look at how aesthetic that rocket looks. It's perfect. It is perfect. It's a shame that we're not using that anymore. Yeah, Vulcan's nice. Vulcan's nice, but this though, Vulcan is great. This is great, but I like this. I want this. I want more Delta. Oh, the camera panning up after swing arm separation is just... Oh, that's nice. That's really nice. That's really nice. Biggie, 48-month resub. Yep. That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's oh, dude. Delta 4 is the Fireman Bill era of SNL. Well said. Well said. What's the TWR on that? 1.1, 1.2? You're not going to get a very energetic TWR out of this. Well, not an energetic TWR. That's not really the right way to say that, Sile. You're not going to get high TWR with Delta just because of hydrolocks. Biggie at a 48. Where does that go in mission control? Yeah, it's gonna have to put that somewhere. Oh, mama. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh. Put it down. Oh, yeah. Oh, the moon. More beautiful. Oh. The Delta IV Heavy carrying the L91 payload. It is his love. It is his life. It is his fault he forgot to lock the sequencer. Come back. Come back to me. Oh. Hey, baby. Hey, baby. No. Hey, baby, where you going? She was a seaside, launching in and slipping in and launching on ringside. On top of the world. Top of the world. No? All right. Oh. Dude, I could look at this all day. This is really sweet. I'm sorry. I'm really having fun with this. Yeah, I know it's a little gratuitous and kind of sad. I get it. I understand. Don't care. On top of the world. Top of the world. Oh, yeah. Down the rockets. Hello. Not me. Can't do without. No. Oh, yeah. Beautiful lunch. Oh, yeah. Beautiful lunch. No, alright. I'm not doing it. That's better than a cup of coffee, man. I mean, I liked your song. Thanks, Newt. Thank you. Thank you. No, trust me, she's fine with it. Bring her. It doesn't count. It doesn't count. All right, we could do with more Van Halen. Bow, 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 do, 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 bow, 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 bow. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Somebody get me a doctor! Somebody get me a shot. Bow now. I'm sorry. This footage is hyping me up, and yeah, yep. That I got nothing else. This isn't really like news per se, but. That's freaking sweet. Oh, I want it. I want one. I want an entire Delta booster. I want one. Oh. I shared Dart News right at the beginning, Yuri. Somebody get me a doctor. Somebody give me a doctor. Oh, somebody give me a shot. It is the Space and Rocket Review. We are reviewing the heck out of the L-91 mission. Yes. Mm-hmm. That was the schnitzel. And on that bombshell, time for me to go to bed. Enjoy the 20 minutes of Delta IV Heavy launches in the span of 10 minutes. Shut up. Oh, shut up. Hammond. you guys got a cigarette? Can I bum one, please? It's awesome. It's awesome. This is awesome. Anyway. Did you watch the latest Grand Tour episode? Nope. Nope. Do those arms move at forced motion, or how does it work? Yes, they are programmed to go before motion, but how do they retract everything if a rocket says nope and those arms are gravity thrown? It has a pin that they retract. It's one of the last things that they do, goalie. Yeah, they so as always, guys, it's actually a good question. As always, umbilicals usually don't move until the rocket moves. The reason why is, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some rockets that snap the umbilicals off before they go. Ariane 5 is a good example. They retract the umbilicals and then they send the rocket, right? Most rockets, most of them, and now, like I said, there are some case examples. Most rockets will not separate the umbilicals until first motion. The reason why is because if something does go wrong with the rocket, you don't want to go out there and have to reattach all the damn swing arms. That's a pain in the butt. That takes time and it's annoying. You don't want to do that. So if you look, we watch this in slow motion, the vehicle will actually separate from the pad first. Watch, Delta 4 will start to go up. See? It starts to go up, and right after it starts to go up, that's when they start separating umbilicals. See? And then once the rocket really starts going, it's a ground sequenced event here. Those umbilicals pop off, it'll trigger the swing arms to go. And that's exactly what happens. And it pulls the umbilicals away. Now, what you're looking at here is the DCSSU. That's the Delta Cryogenic Second Stage Umbilical. And then down here, you're looking at Delta 4's ground umbilical carrier plate, the GUP. It has three GUPs because you have 3 boosters, right? The ground umbilical carrier plate is a has-gas evac system designed for getting gaseous hydrogen away, similar to SLS. The reason why it's similar to SLS is because Delta 4 is technically, big technicality, a shuttle-derived launch vehicle. I mean, there are some pretty big cues that tell you, like the orange foam. The orange foam is one. The RS-68 is a distant cousin. Those things right there, that's a distant cousin of the shuttle engine. It is a low-cost shuttle engine. That's exactly what it was designed to be. The architecture of Delta 4 is also very similar to the core stage of SLS. It's very close. If you look, even the umbilicals, or the commodities that go down the sides of the booster, same thing. It's the same thing. These things have autogenous pressurization, the CBCs. So you have autogenous pressurization, just like the SLS core and just like the shuttle's external tank. You have a LOX downcomer, and then you have the race weight. They're even in the same spots as SLS. That is in the same exact positions. The SLS is just an 8.4 meter core, and that's a 5 meter core. Does this mean we call SLS Delta 5? That is exactly where I was going with this. SLS is in the same family of rockets as Delta 4. It is a single stick rocket, i.e. not the space shuttle, right? So that makes it more like Delta 5 or Delta 4 than anything. And it has a Delta upper stage in it. It has a Delta derived upper stage in it called the ICPS. SLS is Delta 5. You are wrong if you disagree. Yep. Don't at me. It's Delta 5 medium 5.2 if you really want to be technical per Delta's naming convention. Or the internal code would be a Delta 10,000. Because technically that's a Delta 9,000 right there. You want to know what's Delta 8,000? Delta 3. You want to know what's Delta 7,000? Delta 2. Want to know what's Delta 6,000? Well, it's a derivative of Delta 1. Yep. So we need Delta 5 heavy. That's what I'm trying to tell you. The other thing, fellas, is that Delta 4 had modular architecture from the start. Delta 4 is designed to have 2 different types of upper stages. Not a lot of people know that. Delta 4 was designed to scale into the 5 meter DCSS back in the 2000s. I will show you. Here. Yep, here we go. This is off Commons, so the Wikipedia Commons. So check it out. Delta IV was always designed to scale to a 5-meter upper stage. They had a 4.5 meter upper stage, a 4.5 meter DCSS, which is what was similar to Delta 3's upper stage. And then they switched to a 5 meter Delta cryogenic second stage. So they had medium, and then they got rid of medium. They started using medium plus and heavy. And now they don't use medium plus anymore, and they just use heavy. It was always designed to scale to a 5 meter stage. SLS is designed to scale to a full-sized 8.4 meter stage, and it carries a Delta IV derived stage on it right now. SLS is Delta V. You're not changing my mind. It literally abides by all Delta naming nomenclature, which is kind of weird. It's kind of a weird coincidence. I'm calling it Delta V from now on. Just because I also can't bear the fact that the Delta family of rockets is retired. The Delta family of rockets can literally trace its roots back to the Thor missile, which was one of the first operational IRBMs that the US ever fielded from the very start of the space program. I want a space program with Shuttle, SLS Block 1B, and Delta IV with a crew-rated 1 instead of Ares 1. I'll take Ares 1, Ares 5 in the Shuttle. Snackless. Yeah, Ares 1, Ares 5 in the Shuttle. Yeah, that's what I want. I'll take that. Yeah. Yeah, I figure I can hook that up. You know, you have 39A, 39B, right? You have 4 high bays. High bay 4 is for external tank checkout. Okay. You leave high bay 1. High bay 1 for the shuttle. High bay 3 for Ares 1. And then high bay 2 for Ares 5. And then leave high bay 4 as a checkout facility for shuttle external tanks. You literally could do that. How about shuttle and direct? Nah, direct is dumb. I don't want direct. I mean, it's cool, but no, thank you. Can I see your last, please, and thanks? No, Brian, shut up. I'm just kidding, man. What's up? I have an English project and we have to pick a stance on an issue. I was thinking of doing one on the importance of a national space program, but I don't know where to start. Any ideas? The importance of a national space program? JFK's speech in 1962 at Rice University is a pretty damn good place to start. Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. Not because it is easy, but because it is hard. Because that challenge was served to organize and measure the best of our skills. Because that challenge is one we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. And the others.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
No, seriously, if you listen to that whole speech, Brian, JFK actually laid down a bunch of really good reasons why a good national space program to lead the forefront of the exploration of space is a really good idea. Start with that speech. Trust me on that one. That speech is one of the most gnarly speeches I've ever seen a president give. It's right up there with like the Gettysburg Address for me. It's right up there with that. Check out Dr. Robert Zubrin. Zubrin? What about him, Motorkid? I know who he is. Yeah, Brian, check that speech. Why does Rice play Texas? And then you can listen to the native accent of my people. Then yeah, there's also Von Braun's. Yeah. That was meant to go to Brian. Oh, yeah. Here, how about this one for you? Headphone users. Here's a good case for it.
We have been given the scientific knowledge, the technical ability, and the materials to pursue the exploration of the universe. To ignore these great resources would be a corruption of a God-given ability.
10, 9, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3.
I'm not turning it down.
1.
Headphone users.
0. All engine running.
Help. Go ahead, Tess, that's fine. Mamma mia. Oh, it gets me fired up, man. I just want to yell, shake it, bake! 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 I can just say it 1,000 times, man, and fire me up. Shake it, bake! Shake it! Shake it before you make it! That's my favorite. That's my favorite right there. I really like that a lot. I really like it. I wonder how much stuff gets flat out melted by exhaust gas. Well, they try to shoot. They shoot basically Niagara Falls worth of water into the flame trench SASS to prevent that from happening, but it still does it. Actually, you don't get a lot of melting. You get a lot of coking, but the exhaust from these is hot enough to melt concrete. Melt concrete. I'll say that one more time. The exhaust from that thing is hot enough to melt concrete. Ask me how I know. I've stood in the flame trench of one of them, not when it was going off. Stood in the flame trench on 39B. It's enough to melt concrete. I can verifiably say that as a primary source. Yep, that is enough to melt concrete. Yeah, 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 it'll melt concrete. Hang on. Give me 1 second. I will find picture. Maybe here? Oh. Please hold. Do you want to see a picture? I'm finding it. Give me 1 second. It's... Well... Tell you what. You can get a good look at a flame trench by sticking your head up a rocket engineer's butt, but you'd rather take his word for it. Now, here. Is that good enough evidence for you? It's enough to melt concrete. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did. I saw that up close. It was a flame deflector, though, Forge, but yeah. Yeah, anyway. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's not the KSCVC Tor, if you catch my drift. Nice green screen. You're a green screen. Destroyed. You know what? You know what? You know what? You know what? We're watching this again. Decide. Bandit, I'm busy right now. Oh. But we need new pics with EJ in them. I'm working on it, man. I'm working on it. Rome wasn't built in a day. Give me 1 second. Artemis 1 rolled back to the VAB to a shelter from Hurricane Ian, as seen in this 2.5-hour time lapse. You could say that this rollback shot was straight fire. Does that read? Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, sweet. Sweet. We'll tweet that. Yeah, because Das got us a good crew access arm. Watch, ready? Okay, roll it in. Okay, roll it in. Ever heard of the RL-60? No. That sky, though. Yeah. Yeah, you see right over there? That looks like, yeah. Very cumulus. Yes, very cumulus. Very, very cumulus. Yeah, that's rain over there. That's a lot of rain. Anyway. Anyway, the reason why I said it's straight, that rollback shot was straight fire is because right when SLS rolled inside to High Bay 3, there was a fire inside of the VAB. Don't worry, it had nothing to do with SLS. There was just a weird coincidence. Yeah. See last, please. Thank gosh it rolled back. Oh, I hope this model is inaccurate. Oh, jeez, if you're in Bradenton, Bradenton's gonna get railed. Oh dear. Oh dear. Let's really hope that Ian doesn't do that. Freedom Factory. Well, actually, that's something that I was talking about a little bit ago, dudes. Racetracks actually have a pretty low coefficient of drag because of the it's not really a coefficient of drag. Racetracks don't get particularly damaged. The reason why is because of the bank turns. Bank turns. Yeah. It protects the track inadvertently, but you kind of have to have the wind coming from the right direction. But something like the Freedom Factory has those high berms around it. Something like Daytona has those high berms around it. Those can deflect the air up from the bank corners. It'll deflect the air up and away. Believe it or not. So, I mean, racetracks do get damaged from hurricanes, but like if you look at old Cleater's track, where is it? I'm trying to find it. Give me 1 second. You look at old Cleater's track, it should be okay. Because the winds from the hurricane will just blow up and over the bleachers and stuff. Theoretically, like, don't get me wrong. You never know. I'm trying to find the dang thing. Oh, there it is. Freedom Factory will soon be a boat race course. Well, so if you look at it, right, the whole thing is a gigantic bowl. See, you can see that there's the berm right there. The whole thing is a big bowl. The wind will just blow up and over the track. It'll deflect the wind up and over, and it'll, believe it or not, create low pressure right here. Now, what that's going to do to the track, I have no idea. And the bleachers are kind of still susceptible, but you guys also got to remember that bleachers are see-through. They're. I was about to say they're transparent. That's not right. There's no lots of crazy edges on the bleachers. If you're, in fact, if you're looking at the bleachers from the front and you're looking at them straight forward, you can see right through them. That's good. That's good. You know why? Because there's not one big aerodynamic surface. It's not like a house that has walls on it, right? The wind will just go right through the bleachers. I'm telling you, racetracks are particularly insusceptible to, or like oval tracks are particularly insusceptible to hurricanes. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want to jinx anything. You know, like, I don't want to jinx anything, but it is something to know. Something that's kind of an important thing to understand. You know, the racetrack, like Daytona has been there for a long time. Hurricanes don't seemingly do much damage to it, right? It's gotten direct center hit by hurricanes before. It's just, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's going to do some damage, right? But it's not like going to destroy the track or anything. It's not like a bomb went off or something. You know, if we go up here and look at Daytona, where are you? See, Daytona's the same way. This big super speedway. See the berm? It'll just deflect wind up and over. Keeps the track pretty okay. And then even these bleachers here, the wind is supposed to go right through them. You know, look at how everything's really cavernous on purpose. The wind goes right through them. That's done like that on purpose, so it doesn't blow away. Also, Daytona, baby. Look at that track. Look at that track. That track's a beast. Jim Farley is live for Ford. Oh, interesting. Yep. Anyway. So yeah, I mean, even then, you know, despite racetracks being pretty aerodynamic, you still, you know, everybody down in Florida, don't go and try to hunker down in a racetrack. That's not going to work. Second of all, please be safe down there. I wish you guys all the best. This thing is going to clobber Central Florida, and I'm not too happy about it because that's my favorite part of Florida. Central Florida is best Florida. Goes to the local drag strip. I mean, rarest, you could hug the tree, I guess, on the drag strip. That might work. Yeah, I saw it, Forge. I know. I talked about that at the beginning of Space News. So, fellas, there is one other thing that I wanted to talk to you about. So, the flight readiness review for Crew 5 happened the other day. And there were, believe it or not, some pretty awesome chunks of information that were... There's some pretty awesome chunks of information that were presented. We learned a lot of interesting things about SpaceX's plans in the future. Let's see if I can... Let me see if I can... Here's the live weather track from Goes East. Oh man, that's a big one. All right, here, let's take a look. Did you get the thread? Yeah, there's Mike Baylor's thread. That's what I wanted. That's what I was looking for. I was looking for him or Bill's. All right, so here, check this out. So, listen to this, fellas. There's some juicy freaking information in here. If you're a SpaceX fanboy, you're really going to like this. All right, so NASA's Steve Stitch. Steve Stitch is the guy that oversees NASA's Commercial Crew Program, first of all, just to lay down some names here. This article also has Bill Gerstenmaier. Bill Gerstenmaier, just Gerst for short, is literally SpaceX's like VP of Falcon 9 and Dragon operations. He basically runs the Falcon 9 program. He took over from Hans Königsmann when he retired. He is basically the guy overseeing Falcon 9's everything, Falcon 9 and Dragon. So if Gerst says something about what SpaceX 6 is doing with Dragon, you listen. So listen to this, right? And Starship too. Gerst is in charge of Starship too. He's in charge of organizing the program. His resume makes him very qualified to do something like that. But listen up. So NASA's Steve Stitch says that SpaceX and NASA are continuing to look at outfitting Slick 40 for Dragon missions, given the Starship work at 39A. SpaceX's Bill Gerstenmaier says that hardware is already in work to prepare Slick 40. Starship will only come to 39A after it's proven reliable in Tejas. Gerst further adds that this is going to happen, and he reinforces the point, starting with cargo launches from Slick 40 before moving to a full crew launch. It will be ready. Slick 40 will be ready for crew in time for Starship. Is that the whole thread right there? I think that's the whole thing. That right there is unbelievable information. So SpaceX is not only planning, SpaceX can launch people from 39A. And ULA and Boeing can launch people from Slick 41. You can launch people from 39B with SLS eventually. You can't do that just yet. But SpaceX is now looking at taking Slick 40, which has been previously used for uncrewed missions, right? Total just uncrewed. It's been basically used for Starlink and commercial missions. And they're looking to build a crew access tower for it as well and launch crew from it. Now, they said it's primarily because of Starship. They don't want to, they want to launch crew from there while they're building out the Starship pad, which makes sense. But also, I think that 39A has to have some kind of downtime. Because 39A is also, they're building a mobile service tower similar to Slick 6 for Falcon 9 here for defense payload. So 39A is going to have to build a gigantic structure right here. And I don't think I need to tell you why doing that would cause some problems while you're trying to also launch people and Falcon 9s into space. So down here at Slick 40, which is SpaceX's pad that they've used the longest, they're going to build a crew access tower that I bet you it ends up looking similar to the crew access tower at Slick 41. There's a crew access structure here as well, but you can't see it because these pictures are old. Get rid of 3D buildings for a moment. See the thing that says ULA on it? That is a crew access tower. And I'm pretty sure they'll be building one very similar to that at Slick 40 because 40 and 41 are similar pad architecture because they were both built for Titan rockets. The structure in question. Yeah, SpaceX needs to build this. They need to build that at 39A. This is a mobile service tower that's going to be erected here to enable Falcon Heavy to launch with a bigger fairing. A bigger fairing that is basically for National Reconnaissance Office missions, for Space Force missions. And the payload, whatever it may be, needs to be vertically integrated. So they need a mobile service tower. So I would guess that once Slick 40 crew rating comes around, you'll start to see construction on this piece of equipment right here, which is pretty freaking cool, man. Yeah, that fairing is also freaking gigantic, and that fairing, which was basically funded by the Department of Defense, will launch the first components for Gateway. Yeah, true story. Has SpaceX ever had a vertically integrated payload? I don't think so. Okay, Bandit. Hellfish. Ugh, that is a gnarly freaking hurricane. Is Dragon XL still happening? MotoKid, I have no idea. I have not heard anything about Dragon XL since SpaceX announced it. I have no clue. Technically, Starship being stacked onto Super Heavy is vertical integration. What's Gateway? Gateway is NASA's lunar space station. Lunar space station that they're going to work. It's more lunar research facility. Dragon XL was just paid $300 million to add toilets on board, by the way. Oh, very nice. Always great streams. Happy to support you. Thanks, Tech. I appreciate that. So, that's actually pretty cool. It's a pretty cool piece of information that Slick 40 is going to launch people. That will If I'm understanding this right, we will have 4 pads that are capable down the Cape that are capable of launching people into space. 39A, 39A, 39B, Slick 41, and Slick 40, which is, I don't think we've ever had that many crew-rated pads at the Cape, literally ever. Yeah, ever. So crew launches from the Cape started over here. They started at Complex 14, which is this one right there. With the, well, actually, that's not true. That was the second crewed launch site. The first crewed launch site is down here, LC5. LC4 and LC5. This is where the first Americans launched into space. First Americans, not first people. That was Yuri. Credit where credit is due. LC4 and LC5 are the Space Force Missile Museum. Believe it or not, it has the Delta IV CBC test article there. Yeah, that's what happens to spray on foam insulation if you leave it outside for 20 years. Yeah. I hugged that Delta IV, by the way. I did. So, that was the first place that we launched people from. The second one was from Mercury Atlas, which is over here at Complex 14. The third one was Complex 19, which is down here, where we launched the Gemini missions. The fourth place to launch that we launched people from was Complex 34 in 1967 with the Apollo 7 mission. Should have been the Apollo 1 mission. And then the fifth place that we've launched people from is 39A, and then the sixth is 39B. But it's really important to note that the second this next pad came online, that wasn't used to launch people anymore. So LC5 went offline for launching people when LC14 came up. When LC14 went offline, LC19 came up for Gemini. And when LC19 went out, that's when we switched to 34 for the Saturn program in Apollo. And we launched crew from that basically once for Apollo 7 to test the Saturn 1B and to test the Apollo Command Service Module, the Block 2 service module to be more exact. And then after that, NASA switched to crew launches at 39A and 39B, and it's been those two pads for crew rating since 1972. It's been those two. Those are the only two crew-rated pads in the entire U.S. Right now, we're on the way to having 4, which is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I would hug a Delta IV if I could, not gonna lie. I'm with you. It would seem that these are the parts for the LC-40 tower. Let me take a look. So, CSI Starbase, our buddy Zach. I'm still trying to get Zach to come on and talk to me. I think he must think I have cooties or something. Nah, I'm just kidding. Zach, if you're watching this, dude, I'm going to call my crew. You're going to call your crew. We can rendezvous. You understand what I'm saying? Picking up what I'm laying down, dude? We still got to do that. Anyway, so Zach says structural steel for the third orbital launch integration tower has been arriving quickly to Roberts Road. No columns on site yet. Really wondering what the timeline is on that third tower. So there is the crew tower for 40, which is unbelievable. You mean 5 if Starship is operational in Texas? Yeah, I guess that's right. 5 including Boca Chica. Looks like the Slick 40 tower will be made out of Starship tower parts. Maybe an upgrade path for Starship at Slick 40.
Discovery, go and
You
drive
think?
up.
You think they would do that? A Starship tower at 40? That wouldn't... I would say that ain't gonna fit, but... Where are they gonna put that? I don't think that... Maybe eventually they'll make this to launch Starship down the road, but I don't think so, fellas. I think we're gonna see something very similar to Slick 41. The Slicklami lid ain't gonna fit. Ain't gonna fit like that. Where Falcon 9 ramps down. When Falcon 9 ramps down. Yes. What's the history of Slick 40 as far as prior launches? Slick 40 was part of the Integrate Transfer and Launch Complex that was built in 1965 for the Air Force's Titan missile program. Or just Titan launch program. This was basically the start of launching defense satellites into space. Titan was the workhorse for it for the Air Force because the Titan missile was the Air Force's project. Believe it or not. this is what I like to tell people. You know, people say, oh, you know, all the U.S. rocket stuff is just stolen German stuff. No, nope, not true. Not true at all. It's not all Operation Paperclip, despite what everybody wants to believe. Everybody wants to have that edgy little fact. Oh, did you know this? Oh, I can't believe that. That's actually wrong. That's actually not right at all. We had 3 different rocket programs going because the different branches of the military in the late 50s were all trying to compete with each other to see who could build the best rocket. It's part of the reason why we had the space race in the first place. The branches, different branches of the military were trying to stay relevant in the wake of, you know, ICBMs, nuclear war, etc., etc. So every branch of the military had their own rocket program. The Army had the Redstone Arsenal, Huntsville, Alabama. That was the Army's ballistic missile program. That's where von Braun worked, the Army Ballistic Missile Agency in Huntsville. That later became Marshall Space Flight Center. Right? The Navy had the Vanguard program, and the Vanguard program was one of the first things to launch into space. Vanguard 1, or was it 1 or 2? I think it was 2. Vanguard 1 exploded. Yeah, the Vanguard was not, had a little bit of bugs. Anyway, and then the Air Force was working with the Titan program. The Air Force was working on Titan. Titan 1 was in the late 50s, just in line with the rest of the rockets. Also competing for Air Force was the Atlas program, which was done by a company called Convair. So Atlas and Titan were really Air Force stuff. And then Vanguard was the Navy, and then Redstone was the Army. Now, in 1958, when NASA was established, they basically liquidated the Army's ballistic missile program and transferred it into NASA. Yeah. The Air Force kept their program, though, because spy satellites. And the Air Force, believe it or not, wanted to launch people into space. Part of the reason why the ITL complex was built was anticipating a lot of Titan launches. And they wanted to work on crew launches from Slick 40 and Slick 41 tech in the 60s. That was part of a program called Gemini MOL, Manned Orbiting Laboratory, which was basically a spy satellite with a space station module attached to the back. You want to spy on the other guy, literally get binoculars and look out the window. And they were going to use Gemini capsules to get there and back. It was basically a Gemini capsule with a space station module behind it. Think kind of like Skylab almost. So it was an early Mir. It's more like Salyut, the Soviet Salyut program, or the Almaz program, but yes. So yeah, the reason why the ITL complex got built in the 60s was to anticipating the Air Force's Titan program, which was going to launch a lot of satellites into space in the future. The Air Force wanted a low-cost measure, and believe it or not, there was a huge competition for Air Force contracts in the late 50s. And the funny story is that von Braun took Saturn I's design and he bid on defense contracts with it. Interestingly enough, or at least he argued in favor of Saturn being a good vehicle to deliver spy satellites. The Air Force was intent on Titan, though. They wanted Titan. And that's part of the reason why the Saturn 1B was never really used for anything else but the early parts of the Apollo program. That was the origins of the Saturn 1 design. The Saturn 1 design was built because they were trying to launch spy satellites into space. I mean, you could go look this up. It was competing with Titan. If you really want to know your history, it was competing with Titan. And the Air Force favored the Titan design because hypergalls. In reality, von Braun really knew his stuff. Saturn 1 is more in line. Saturn 1 and Saturn 1B are more in line with what the Department of Defense would want from a launch vehicle nowadays than Titan 3 was. By a long shot. Oh, yeah. Think about it. Saturn 1 is Kerolox first stage, Hydrolox second stage. Literally Atlas 5. Literally a heavy-duty Atlas 5. That's what they would want. Vulcan is using LNG in the first stage and Hydrolox in the second stage, right? But the Air Force ended up going with the Titan program, and they built out the ITL complex while they were building out Saturn 1 stuff right here. They built out ITL. ITL was actually, it's a pretty damn good design when you think about it. ITL was going to have Titan parts that were delivered via barge right here. They were delivered via barge, and the Titan program and the Titan III and the ITL program was the first program to implement segmented solid rocket boosters. Those segmented boosters ended up finding their way into the space shuttle's design. Yes, like O-ring segmented booster. That was a Titan thing. It was from the Titan III rocket. So, Titan III. See? That was the first one to implement segmented SRBs. That design found its way. These designs were made by Morton Thiokol, and they found their way into the space shuttle to keep costs down, just like the Air Force wanted this because it's going to keep costs down because SRBs. So was NASA short a form to focus on just one agency on just one rocket, or is that incorrect? NASA was focused to basically become a civilian spaceflight agency. The reason why is because Eisenhower wanted to keep space exploration peaceful. He wanted to keep it peaceful. He didn't want the arms race to extend into space because he was worried that if the arms race extended into space, you would enter an untenable arms race. And the military-industrial complex would grow. Like a lot of people say, "Oh, Eisenhower warned us about the military-industrial complex." Blah 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 blah. But they never actually bothered to go and listen to the damn speech. Yeah, that's one of the things he cited. He cited that if we allow space to be militarized, we'll enter an untenable arms race that'll drive us both into the ground. And that's why he was so adamant about making space a peaceful endeavor when he established NASA. He basically took the Army's ballistic missile program and said, "Nope, you make civilian rockets now." Yeah, very smart. Not a bad. That's actually a pretty good move. The unfortunate circumstances of doing something like that was mass nationalization of the space program. That's the part that a lot of people don't know about. The commercial market started growing like crazy in the early 60s, but it ended up being absorbed by NASA. Yeah, and then we ended up getting something like, ELV and NSSL, stuff like that. Yeah. The commercial, one of the things that did is, keeping, closing off space like that and consolidating stuff by forming NASA basically destroyed the commercial market. True story. Not a lot of people know about that. Could write a whole paper on that stuff. Yeah, Lloyd, he's pretty cool. He's pretty smart, dude. He's a pretty smart guy. Yeah, he's pretty damn smart. Telstar was launched on a Thor Delta. Yep, that's right. The first communications satellite, Telstar 1, basically looks like a disco ball floating around in space. That was the emergence of the commercial market. You wonder where that went after that. Went the way of the dodo pretty quick. That's because I'm not going to say we nationalized the space program, but making NASA and making space wholly for peaceful operations really killed the commercial market. Yeah, it did. Interestingly enough. But yeah, that's what the ITL complex was built for. It was built for the Titan III program, and it was built for crew launches for the Gemini MOL program. The other thing that the Apollo program did, and NASA inadvertently, was it killed the Air Force's manned space program because, no military in space. When they signed the Outer Space Treaty in 1967, that basically voided any reason to launch people from here. True story. And the Air Force's astronaut corps was basically absorbed into NASA. True story. So ITL was built, believe it or not, it was almost as big as Complex 39. What they did, how this thing worked, was they had mobile launcher storage right there, and then they had a 4-bay vehicle assembly building here for putting Titan boosters together. You could put Titan booster and payload together here, and depending on what variant of the Titan rocket you were launching, you would outfit it with different upper stages. Titan was like a Lego kit. It's one of the closest things we have to a Kerbal rocket. You could have Titan 1, Titan 2 stage. You could have a Gemini capsule on top of that. You could have a payload fairing. You could have the conic fairing. You could have an Agena upper stage. You could have Centaur on top of that. You could have Trans stage on top of it. They have a bunch of different variants of Titan. There are so many different ones. Titan 3 can actually launch with a Centaur on top. So you have Titan 3, so Titan 1 stage, Titan 2 stage with the SRBs on top of it. And then you could have Trans stage, and then you could have Centaur on top of that. Yeah, Titan was pretty crazy. Like a Centaur stage, like that. You could launch that on top of this. There's Titan 3 Centaur, there was Titan Agena, there was Titan Gemini MOL. There's a bunch of different things. You can do all different types of stuff. And those 4 VABs were designed to be able to handle all these different variants, with the exception of 1, 2, and 3. That's a Titan 1. That's the Titan 2. That's Titan 3 GLV, which is Gemini launch vehicle. So basically 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 were all designed to be launched out of that launch complex. So they needed a 4-bay VAB. Yeah, see that one? See that one with the pointy tanks on the bottom? That's Transstage. And then you could put Star 48s and a bunch of other things on top of it. It's actually a really, 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 really configurable rocket. It kind of started us down that meta that gave us Delta 4 Heavy, or Delta 4, Atlas, Atlas 2AS, Atlas 3, Atlas 5, Delta 2, Delta 3, Delta 4, and now Delta 5 with SLS. Yes, I'm calling it that. I don't care what you have to say. It's a miracle in the Super Duty lineup that there's a single cab long bed. Oh, neat. Sorry if I derailed you. No problem, dude. I love talking about this stuff. So they had 4 VABs and 4 mobile launchers, which is actually, I think they had more, which is why they had storage right there. These things were moved by 2 Alco switchers, and they were moved down the train tracks, very similar to Atlas 5. And then once the rocket was ready to go, they'd move it all the way down here. And they put it in that building right there, which is called this SMARF, the Solid Rocket Motor Assembly Facility. This is basically where they put the SRBs onto the mobile launcher. So if you wanted a Titan 3, they wouldn't build these inside of the first VAB. They would attach them later because some variants of the Titan rocket did not have that, right? So the Solid Rocket Motor Assembly Facility, the SMARF, is right there. And then if you go down even more, the Solid Rocket Motor, this was also called a SMARF at one point. They built the SRBs in here. They stacked the boosters in there, and then they brought them back here and assembled them on the vehicle. That's now called the Spock. That's where Vulcan rockets are going to get made nowadays, to be honest. And then you had a switch in the track that could go to 40 or 41. And then at the once they rolled up, see these 2 rails right there? There was a mobile service tower. And the mobile service tower was used to integrate vertically integrated payloads. What was in those vertically integrated payloads? Wouldn't you like to know? But yeah, 40 and 41 were used for the Titan 3 program. When the Titan 3 became too expensive in the early 2000s, after launching for like 40 years straight from the ITL complex, these pads came up for rent. A small startup company that had barely launched anything into space leased out Slick 40 in 2009 for their Falcon 9 rocket. And they still use it to this day. And then Slick 41 was leased out to an Evolved Expendable Launch Vehicle, which is tended by Lockheed Martin. And that vehicle was called Atlas 5. And then Lockheed Martin merged with Boeing in 2003 to form ULA. Yep. Yeah, the ITL is a gigantic Titan assembly line. Fun fact, they wanted to build a 3rd pad right here. They wanted to build Slick 42 right there. It was going to branch off basically right here, following that rail line, and there was going to be another pad there. They never built it, though. They never needed it. Why did Titan 3 suddenly become expensive? Well, Back Alley, the thing about the Titan rocket is one of the reasons why it lasted so ridiculously long is because the Titan assembly lines. So the factory that makes Titans was operable basically into the 1980s. The reason why it was operable into the 1980s is because we kept the Titan ICBM, so the Titan II ICBM, on as a retaliatory strike weapon in our nuclear triad until the early 80s. So basically the factory for Titan was open until the 80s when they shut it down. And the Titan II missiles that were decommissioned from their silos, and there were 3 clusters of silos that were in Arkansas, Kansas, and Arizona, if I'm remembering right. All those missiles became surplus, and they kept using them. They kept using those missiles all the way until 2005. The reason why it became so expensive is because it came around to the point where they used up all the damn missiles, and they would have had to build more, and the Air Force said, yeah, we're not doing that. Yeah, that's a lot of the Air Force launch vehicles for the longest time were just converted ICBMs. We have a Titan 1 in Rapid City, South Dakota. Well, Titan 1 launch complexes, Trainman, are different than Titan 2. Titan 1 launch complexes were in South Dakota, Central California. Yeah, Central California. It was Central California. I know that's not a thing, people from California. They were south of Fresno, north of Bakersfield. And I forget where the last one was. Yeah, and then Vandenberg served as the test site. Vandenberg was the test site for ICBMs. Crazy that they made so many damn Titan missiles. They made so many dang Titan missiles that they ran out in 2005. That was the last one. The last Titan 2 or Titan 3 derived launch was in 2005. Which was nuts to me. That's absolutely insane. Check this out. There's a Titan rocket launched from Slick 3. Believe it or not, that's Slick 3 at Vandenberg. That's Atlas 5's pad. Look. 2005. Here's your take on a few things. Oh. I like that. Oh, I really like that, Zay. Yeah, nice upper stage. Yeah, I know about Silo World. Yep. Were Titan missiles used for any manned launches? Yeah. Titan 2 GLV is the variant. It was used to launch every single Gemini mission. All, what was it, 13 of them? 12 crewed missions, 1 uncrewed mission. Yep. Titan is a really interesting piece of history, and we have a lot of new space fans around, and not a lot of new space fans know about it. There's the Titan 2 GLV. That's Complex 19. Yeah. All the Gemini missions were launched on basically an ICBM. That is an ICBM. You just swap the nuclear warhead out for a service module in a Gemini capsule. Heck, they even made the Gemini capsule look like the ICBM because of aerodynamics. Hang on, I just realized launching Atlas and Titan missiles, etc. from inland silos would drop stages over populated areas. I assume the plan was not to care about bigger things. Trainman, in the case of Titan is a retaliatory strike weapon. Basically, oh crap, they're launching stuff at us. Hit them with everything we got. The Titan was the heaviest launch ICBM that we've ever fielded. We stopped doing it in the 80s because of the strategic arms limitation treaties that were signed by us in the Soviet Union. Because untenable arms race. It's almost like Eisenhower called it or something. I know. Funny story. Yeah, if there's a retaliatory strike, the last thing you really want to worry about is stages falling on your own people because your own people are most likely gone. Yeah, I don't think you need to worry about it falling on populated areas because, well, first of all, the second stage is going to burn up. The first stage will come back down, but even if we were launching it in peace times, the likelihood of it actually hitting someone is very unlikely because the places where they put the Titan launch complexes were literally in the middle of nowhere. The second part of that is, yeah, in a nuclear retaliatory strike, the city that the launch silos are around are probably already gone. Yeah. They are intentionally in the middle of nowhere. The Titan 2 silos are purposefully, I think they're like 10 miles away from each other because compartmentalization, that makes them harder to take out. Yeah. Yeah, basically if Titan goes off, something really, really, really went wrong. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that was the plan. If the Titans had to go, that means we failed at preventing World War III, which means we're all basically glass. You know, it's funny. I mean, it's funny talking about nuclear, like full-scale nuclear war. There's really no like partial victory. You either win or you lose. Most likely you're going to lose. And the probability, like even if you killed more and you eliminated the threat, at what cost? So it's entirely possible that entering into a nuclear exchange, full-scale nuclear exchange, right? It's entirely possible that you'll get killed in the process. It's like when you're playing a shooting game, right? And you shoot a guy and he shoots you and you both kill each other because of lag or whatever, right? You know, and you shoot a game. That's really annoying, isn't it? That's basically how a nuclear exchange will go. There's no real good way to win. If you've ever watched war games, you know all about this. The only winning move is to just don't play, you know? And they explained, the funny thing is, War Games is supposed to be a kid's movie, but it actually explains nuclear deterrence pretty dang well. Do you play tic-tac-toe anymore? Why not? Because you're always going to tie. You're never going to win. If the other guy knows how to play tic-tac-toe and you know how to play tic-tac-toe, you're never going to win. You're always going to push. That's nuclear warfare 101. You're never... So the best move is to just keep it there and just basically everybody has guns pointed at everybody else and said, don't do anything or we'll shoot. Fine, you don't do anything and we'll shoot. It kept the peace for 70 years, man. It's still keeping the peace to this day, ironically. Although that's kind of been in question a little bit lately, but I digress. Yeah, Spider-Man meme. You! No, you! No, you! Oh, you're sitting here talking about our back door? Oh, come on, doctors. You're giving away all of our best tricks. It becomes a standoff, and that's scary. Now, okay, to feed into the morbidity of this, if people really want to know, nuclear strike weapons are divided kind of into two real big things. It depends on what the nuke is aimed at. Now, and there's airburst, and then there's bunker buster nukes. Well, bunker buster nukes. There's airburst and then there's ground burst. Okay. And the Soviet and now the Russians, any nuclear power has both of these. We have both of these. The Chinese have both of these. The Europeans have both of these. The Russians have both of these. You really divide it into two types of things. You have the airburst ones, which is what everybody knows about. The airburst ones are, usually consist of a multiple impact reentry vehicle. So basically you shoot the ICBM up, it stages at apogee and basically just rains down a cluster bomb nuke. Now, those nukes don't hit the ground and then explode. They explode directionally towards the city and it shoots a gigantic pressure wave at the city and literally obliterates anything in its path. Think about like a nuclear shotgun. Yeah, like that. It just goes out in a cone in a direction. Now, please don't ever do this, but if you had a shotgun, you point it at the ground, you shot, it's going to leave a nice big crater on the ground. But not a big crater, right? But you get the idea. Don't ever do that. Don't ever negligently discharge a weapon like that. Follow the 4 rules of trigger safety. If you're using firearms, don't be an idiot. So that's an airburster weapon. Now, if you're going to get into, here's the icky part. The ground penetrators. These nukes go into the ground and they dig themselves into the ground. It's purposefully designed to sink itself into the ground. So it uses its kinetic energy to basically drill a hole into the ground just through sheer force. Drill a hole and then probably go in like 20 or 30 feet and then blow up. Yeah, those ones are the scary ones. Those ones are the ones that are going to leave a gigantic frigging crater. And you can keep in mind, you can have multiple impact reentry vehicles with airburst or with ground pen. The ground penetrating stuff is what you'd use to take out your your adversary's silos, not your buddies. That's what you'd use to try and take out their nukes. It's not going to work that way, but because they'll launch. Because once again, you're launching the ICBM. You got 15 minutes. In that 15 minutes, they're going to realize they're getting shot at. They're going to launch their stuff. So if anything, you're just going to target a bunch of empty silos. Yep, and then there's submarines on top of that. Yep. Submarines have airburst and they have ground penetrating nuclear weapons. They have both of those things. Yeah. Yeah, this stuff's pretty morbid. I don't want to play this game. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, if you're curious, yeah, the airburster ones is the things that you'd hit cities with. The ground burster ones are the thing that you'd hit military targets with. This feeds into a much bigger nuclear doctrine called mutually assured destruction, or MAD, which is the reason why the Soviets and the Americans in the 80s, Reagan and Gorbachev basically came together and said, we can't keep doing this. This isn't going to end well. If we just keep building nukes, if we just keep building this and building this and building this, it'll end in a nuclear conflict and will literally kill every living thing on this planet. That's not a good idea if you want your ideology to spread, to have nobody to spread it to, right? Oh, we can't spread the glorious message of Marxist-Leninists to a bunch of glass. Yeah, that doesn't work that way. Same thing for us, right? Like, you can't really do that. So we decided to ramp that down. We decided to not do that. And then the strategic arms limitation treaties that followed right after that, which is what decommissioned the Titan program permanently. And it's not space related, but what's your thoughts on the... I don't know, back alley. I'm not familiar enough with current geopolitics to be able to say. I'm a history teacher, if anything. You can spread your ideology to cockroaches. Oh, God, Ian's here. No, you stay far away from here. You hear me? Far away! Been a minute with old school, but oh my gosh, the A3 stand is getting used. Yeah, man, it's pretty cool. You stay far away from here. You hear me, Fry Man? Far away! Yeah, there's dirty bombs. Yeah, that's also bad, Aqualex. But I don't think we use those too much, but I don't know for sure. But yeah, they're a little thing on mutually assured destruction. There's a reason why they sit in their silos. The nukes sit in their silos all day. It's better to have it, not need it, need it, not have it. You know what I mean? But also, you really don't want to use that. If you use that, death. Lots of it. You're tearing us apart, and you did not hit her. It's not true. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Ian. What's new with you? Anyway, yeah, interesting bit on that. But yeah, going back to where I was going with this conversation, there is about to be... SpaceX is going to crew rate Slick 40. They're going to build a crew service structure here, which is really cool. That will mark the first time where we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 operational pads that all are tenable for human spaceflight, which is pretty damn cool. 3 of them being differential architecture, meaning SLS with Orion, Dragon Falcon 9, and Atlas 5 and Starliner. And then Falcon 9 and Dragon again, but you get the idea. Pretty awesome. I don't think we've ever had 4 operational human spaceflight pads ever, Kirill. Ever. And that's what devolved into that history lesson about nukes and stuff and why each pad is there. Yeah, you either lose or you lose harder than the other guy. Exactly. Tic-tac-toe. You're always going to push. It's a bad idea. Don't. I mean, back alley, if that moves into, somehow into modern geopolitics, you're not going to. But then again, you never know. I wouldn't roll the dice. Oh, that's particularly messed up, Aqualex. Nice. And soon Starship. Yep. Starship from Texas and Starship from 39A. It's going to be crazy. There's going to be 5. Yeah, there's LC-49, Jan, but I refuse to believe that LC-49 exists until I see someone start moving some soil around here. And personally, I think 49 should be connected into the crawlerway, and 49 should just be the name for 39C. They should literally build this right there and build out 39C exactly where it was supposed to be. And actually, I have my theories about that. And, it's not just me wanting to see 3 of the same type of pads or live out some weird Apollo fantasy of having multiple Apollo-style pads or something. No, hear me out. If you think about this, just listen for a second. If we wanted to make another pad that was attached to Complex 39, It would make sense. It would make sense to connect it in and expand the crawlerway down that way. Why? Why would you do that? Well, NASA wants to make Kennedy Space Center a multi-user spaceport. In the press conference we've watched this afternoon, they called it a multi-user spaceport. They want to be able to have different commercial customers use Kennedy Space Center on top of NASA missions, right? So if you're going to build LC-49, you might as well hook it into the VAB, so whatever customer you want, let's be real, it's probably going to be SpaceX, whatever customer you want has access to the vehicle assembly building's facilities, right? That makes sense. But just in case I didn't sell you on it, to build a big launch pad, you need to have A, industrial power, right? And B, you also need launch facilities for it. And C, you also need to clear the roads to be able to move heavy stuff to the launch pad where you're building heavy things. If you look at where the tenable location for Complex 49 is supposed to be right around here. What is literally the closest bit of heavy infrastructure? 2.5 miles away from pad proper is heavy infrastructure designed to move heavy vehicles. You have the crawlerway. Pretty straightforward stuff. That already has all the heavy industrial power associated with launching anything up to a super heavy launch vehicle, right? That would be a much better option to me than trying to build out some kind of heavy, crazy road that goes 3.6 miles in this direction and trying to make this tenable to moving big payloads and big sub-assemblies down there to make out whatever pad you're trying to build down there. It really doesn't matter if it's like a medium-duty launch vehicle like Falcon or a heavy-duty launch vehicle like Starship. The crawlerway is literally the closest thing. It makes way more sense to build out the heavy infrastructure to the VAB and open up the VAB for potential commercial customers here. And also, that's the closest place for heavy infrastructure in the first place, unless you wanted to build another crawlerway going out this way. Yeah. Pretty crazy, right? The Very Awesome, permission to change the VAB to the Very Awesome building? We can call it that. That's fine. That ghost exit, was there anything ever built out that way at all, or were they just prepping? Complex 39 Aquilex was supposed to be a 5-pad launch complex. Yeah, they were supposed to have 5 of these. Yeah, there was supposed to be, so 39A was supposed to be right here. 39B was supposed to be right here. 39C was supposed to be right here. 39D was supposed to be where 39B is. And 39E was supposed to be where 39A is. Halfway through constructing this, they nixed 2 of the pads and switched to a 3-pad launch complex. So, and then they changed the naming convention to A, B, and C. And then, even after that, when they built the crawlerway out to here, they said, we really only need 2 pads. There's no need to build a 3rd one. And then they switched the naming convention to A and B, and then hence we got our current thing. I'm telling you, the infrastructure to build all the wiring for a completely separated pad is already built into the system. It's already built in. There, in fact, is a sign here. There's a sign on the crawlerway that shows that the electrical conduit and power systems for 39C were already inlaid into the crawlerway. There's the sign right there. Yep, they already built the electrical power systems in. I'm telling you, if they start building Complex 49 out, it's going to be connected into the crawlerway. That's what makes the most sense. That's the lowest cost way to build another pad, because you already have all the power. You already have all the power systems out there, and the power systems are independent of A and B, but they are dependent on Complex 39's power systems. Does that make sense? Yeah, the systems are already wired in. Mm-hmm. That sign is right, I forget where it is. I think it's down here somewhere. I think the sign is like right there. But yeah, all the systems are there to build 39C. Even the wiring is there. Mm-hmm. It's all there. They just capped it right there. Funny story, that's part of the reason why the VAB has 4 high bays in it. 4 high bays, and they built 3 mobile launchers because they wanted to be able to stage multiple missions all at once, because it turns out once you get past the moon, you're going to need multiple heavy-duty rocket launches to make some kind of transfer vehicle. That was the idea. The Apollo program was built to scale up. I will tell you this, Aqualex, you want to hear another crazy one? The VAB, the terrain this way is designed. The terrain was all graded and built here with the intention of taking the VAB and making it go this way. You could expand the high bays. The VAB could be 6 high bays. It could be 8 high bays. It could be 10 high bays. It was built to be expanded. It was built to be expanded from south to north. Crazy part about this is that each high bay is also built as a modular design. It's designed to go up. So if you wanted to build Nova, for instance, you could. Yeah, all this terrain right here is graded. This is why the crawler way goes all the way out and it goes all the way around. Because they built this area in the center here to be able to extend the VAB and build more high bays if needed. This whole program was built to scale. That's why there are 4 firing rooms here. They have 4 because, you know, by the time they switched to a 3-pad launch complex, you wanted 4 firing rooms. The reason why you wanted 4 firing rooms, if you're upgrading one, you have one extra. You have a spare in case one of these are being upgraded. So if you're upgrading 39A's firing room, you can use 2, 3, and 4 for A, B, and C. True story. How much do you want to bet we'll see the VAB extended? I don't think so. I don't think they'll ever extend it. I don't think. So here's the first and foremost, the most realistic answer. I don't think we need to. We have 4 high bays and NASA's struggling to fill 2 of them. High bay 4 right now is used to stage SRBs for SLS. High bay 3 is used to build SLS. High bay 1 is still in shuttle configuration, believe it or not. It could assemble a shuttle stack, even now. And then High Bay 2 was being used to retool to Omega, and then that plans were abandoned. So High Bay 1 and High Bay 2 are literally used for nothing right now. We're having trouble filling all the high bays, which is the other reason why I think if they build 49, they're going to connect it into the crawlerway so NASA can recoup some of the maintenance cost on the VAB. It's really, really expensive to operate a 50-story building with high bays like that. What's Omega? Omega was Northrop Grumman's entrance into the National Security Space Launch Contract Program. It was basically an all SRB-based heavy launch vehicle using segmented SRBs that were derived from the space shuttle. It was a 2-segment SRB on top of a single-segment SRB with a Centaur-styled upper stage. They didn't win the NSSL program. ULA and SpaceX won the 2 contracts for national security space launches, and then after that, Northrop Grumman folded the Omega program. True, but for now, but with SLS Starship and Northrop and NG coming on, New Glenn coming online, I don't know. That brings me kind of to the second thing that I was talking about. I don't think we have the vision to expand the VAB like that. I really don't think we have the vision to do it. Not to sound really kind of pessimistic. Why? Why would we build that? The only reason we would expand the VAB to make it like a 6-bay system is if we basically drastically expanded, and I mean drastically expanded the SLS program. But even then, the VAB with its 4 high bays, if we retooled the other 2 high bays for SLS Block 1B and then eventually SLS Block 2, there's no, you could get away with it. 4 high bays are enough. And the Apollo program is the case for that. 4 high bays is more than enough. Hey, Louie, what's going on? Ping. Would it be possible to rent a high bay of the VAB? NASA has been trying to look for a customer to rent High Bay 1 and High Bay 2, Alucard. Curiously enough, they originally put out a solicitation for High Bay 2. High Bay 2 is... where's the mouse? I lost the mouse on all the monitor real estate that I have. High Bay 2 is this one right here. The one with the flag, the American flag next to it. That's High Bay 2. It's the one that goes out the back. Omega was using High Bay 2, and they were building the mobile launcher in there. But then they decided not to. They decided to stop. when the Omega program folded, right? And then NASA put out a solicitation to see if anybody wanted to rent High Bay 2 2 years ago. And then Alucard, this is where this gets really weird. NASA pulled High Bay 2's for rent sign, so to speak. They pulled it about a year ago. And this is where this gets really weird. NASA pulled the High Bay 2 for rent sign, and then they put the for rent sign on High Bay 1, which is this one right here. So the VAB has 4 high bays in it. So there's High Bay 1, 2, 3, and 4. 3 is used for SLS. That's where SLS is sitting right now. 4 is used to stage SRBs for SLS. And then 1 and 2 are not being used. But they pulled High Bay 2. They pulled it completely. High Bay 2 is not for rent, but High Bay 1 is for rent now. Which is weird. Why would they switch? Interesting, right? I've learned so much with this stream. Jax, I try, dude. That's very strange. More SLS, I should hope. Rocket Guy, I have theories about that yeah, exactly. They're looking... We know that there's nomenclature in there for them to establish a United Space Alliance type thing for SLS. And I think, guys, they basically, the entire shuttle program, basically from like 2005 forward, was operated as a commercial company. But it was a commercial company that was entirely reliant on government contracts. So United Space Alliance, or USA, is the company that operated the space shuttle program for NASA, basically until the end of the program. Interestingly enough, they're trying to do the same thing with SLS. They're trying to basically make SLS commercially operated. And if that sounds weird, the reason why NASA does stuff like that is so the employees can get better benefits, believe it or not. Yeah, you get better benefits under a private system. Yeah, that's why they do that. The bennies are better. So I can only assume that NASA putting up a RFP for High Bay 2 would be for building another SLS High Bay. Still, curiously enough, Rocket Guy, what are they doing with High Bay 2? What's the story there? Why would they pull High Bay 2 and put up High Bay 1? Very strange. Sorry for asking, but I'm on limited bandwidth already. Do you have a TLDR video VOD for the NASA DART? Literally this video when Space News started a couple hours ago. Yep. Do you see a future where all launch pads will be used exponentially more often, kind of like how airport runways are used hundreds of times a day? That is an outcome, Back Alley, if we play our cards right. Why do you think I always talk about the most sustainable way forward? You want the most sustainable way forward? The way that I talk about with SLS and Starship flying at the same time with redundant capability is going to net you the most launches. It's this VOD, yes. Mm-hmm. Who's going to use these apart from NASA? Josh, that's where I'm kind of like, Indeed, but it does make sense if they use 4 for SRB staging, which gives 2 and 3 access to those stage SRBs. You call them bennies. Yep, get better bennies. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. I still don't understand why they pulled that for High Bay 2. Now, I do have a theory. I have a theory. And it's kind of like me huffing the hopium, if you will. It's kind of something that I hope is going to happen, but probably won't. There's a render that's floating out there by an artist called James Vaughn here. The hopium option is this. That's the hopium from your boy. Thank you. I'll rewatch the VOD. I can't download it until the stream ends, but thanks for the answer. Yep. I've heard whispers, dudes, about this happening. But it doesn't really make sense with how Starship is set up. But I do have a theory that SpaceX will use the high bay to store Super Heavy and Starships. They'll use the VAB and the mobile launcher to integrate payload onto Starship and then roll Starship on an ML, except not an ML, out to 39A or 49, which is also why I think it's going to be connected into the crawlerway. Keep in mind, just a personal theory. I don't know. But it makes sense if you think about it. They won't use Starship to stack, because that's what the Mechazilla thing does, the chopsticks and everything. It's supposed to stack. So you're not going to stack in the VAB. But what you could do is use the crawler transporter to move Starships back and forth. And the VAB you could make a clean room environment inside of the VAB to put payloads in, to use it for integration, to use it to stack payloads inside a Starship. And then you basically roll out the Starship. Instead of rolling it on an SPMT, you'd roll it on the crawler transporter out to Mechazilla and somehow make the crawlerway go to the pad, right? You could roll out you could roll out like 2 Super Heavies and 2 Starships doing this way. The crawler could move that easy. SLS is, believe it or not, way heavier than a full Starship stack, like way heavier. SLS is 8 million pounds. Starship, I don't think, is 8 million pounds. It's a lot lighter than that, despite having way more engines. SRBs, man. Solids are more dense than liquids. Am I right? So, I honestly think they'll, like, my kind of hoping dream is that you're not going to see this, but you'll see, like, a mobile launcher move out of the VAB with, like, 2 Super Heavies and 2 Starships stacked on it, and they'll move that out to the tower by making the crawlerway. If you look, the horizontal integration building is right there for Falcon, so they're not gonna mess with that. The crawlerway could basically go straight here, and if you draw a line right out to where Starship Super Heavy's launch pad is, it's basically right here. There's basically a straight open gap right to it. So, once again, this is just me hitting the hopium. I hope that they would do that. It would be really cool to see a Starship roll out of the VAB. And for SpaceX to basically use it as a Starship hangar. That would be really cool. But I highly doubt that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen because SpaceX is going to build a high bay down the road. They're building a high bay down the road at Roberts Road. But then again, that high bay is for manufacturing. It's not for storing. Differences. Yeah, exactly, Oculus. I couldn't find it. All I could find was the lease opportunity approximately by Space Force and Vandenberg. You couldn't find what? Is New Shepard too small for the VAB? Why would we be launching New Shepards out of the VAB? Pause. The NASA High Bay rental opportunity. Type in RFI High Bay 1. If I were to build a launch complex from scratch using modern day technology, would it look any different from Complex 39? It depends on what you're doing, Back Alley. What are you building? What is your rocket supposed to do? Josh, you hear the FAA grounded New Shepard after the NS-23 mission? They grounded it. The FAA said, nah, you're not launching that anymore. You're definitely not launching it with people on it until you figure out what's going on. It does make sense if it's used as a payload integration building since it's close to the pad. Darius, if people aren't completely sold on that idea, consider this. The solid rocket motor assembly facility that we were talking about for the Titan program, that's where SpaceX integrates their payloads for Complex 40. True story. Yeah. It wouldn't be unlike SpaceX using X integration facilities to make new integration facilities. That wouldn't be the first time that they did that. They integrate all Slick 40 payloads inside of that building. The new launch pad would support Falcon 9 and Starship-ish type of launches. Mechazilla, basically. Actually, if you're launching completely different types of architecture using similar propellants off of the same pad, a clean pad design is probably what you'd want. Something like Complex 39. As it should. Any vehicle carrying crew should be until investigation complete. Agreed. Yep. Whoops, I meant New Glenn. Well, guys, I don't think New Glenn is going to use this. I don't think New Glenn has anything to do with using 39A. They were going to at one point, fellas. When the lease for 39A was awarded to SpaceX in 2015, Blue Origin tried to sue them because Blue Origin wanted this pad for New Glenn. Why? Falcon's way bigger than New Glenn, and this would have been easier to build a launch complex here for New Glenn. Does that mean we would have seen New Glenn roll out of the VAB on a launcher? Maybe. Maybe. It's possible. So Blue Origin tried to sue SpaceX, believe it or not, in 2015 over 39A, because they said it was unlawfully given to them. They said they didn't consider Blue Origin's proposal, and they said that they just rushed to give it to SpaceX, and it was a conflict of interest. They ended up losing, and SpaceX has been operating on the site since. Interestingly enough. In the meantime, Blue Origin built Complex 36 down here. Complex 36 absorbed 3 pads, Slick 36A, 36B, and LC11. This is where they're trying to launch New Glenn out of. And they basically turned Slick 36 into a pad that's basically Complex 39 tier. It's as big as 39. Yeah, fun fact, if SpaceX didn't get 39A for launching Crew, what they were going to do is make Slick 40 a twin pad launch complex, very similar to what they're doing with 39A. They, believe it or not, were going to put another launch pad right here. And there was going to be another horizontal integration facility like this over here. And there would have been, you know, a transporter erector right away here, and then a second pad would have been right there. That's what they were going to do. They never did it because they got the lease for 39A. What's the star logo I see on old pictures of the VAB? That's the United States Bicentennial logo, celebrating the 200-year anniversary of the United States. It's the Bicentennial logo from 1976. I think Starship is heavier than SLS. At least the wiki says Super Heavy is 7.5 million pounds, and Starship is 2.5 million pounds, totaling 10 million pounds. SLS only weighs 5.75. I thought it was 8, Elvis. Interesting. Interesting, actually. Yeah. Does that take into account? Is that fully loaded or unloaded? Now I'm interested. I mean, SLS is the heaviest thing they've ever rolled out of the VAB because of the 5-segment solids. That thing is freaking heavy. So much so that they had to reinforce the crawler. They had to reinforce CT2 to be able to handle 15 million pounds of launch pad and launch vehicle. And they had to reinforce the mobile launcher because it was bending under the crazy loads. Kuro, man, I've been watching for years. You're still amazing. Some of the small tidbits you know off the top. It's what I do, Kuro. This is my jam, dude. It's what I love doing. Where does SLS get its propellants at? From a fuel tank? Yeah, only Crawler Transporter 2 can move SLS. CT1, it works, but it wouldn't be able to move it. It's too heavy. It wouldn't be able to pull it. Let me see, Novus. It says 5.75 on page 2. He uses the Block 1 configuration. He stands at 322 feet taller than the Statue of Liberty and weighs 5.75 million pounds. SLS would produce 8.8 million pounds of maximum thrust, 15% more than the Saturn V rocket. Okay. Okay. Idiot question. Idiot question time. If SLS weighs 5.75 million pounds and produces 8.8 million pounds out of the box, isn't that like a... What TWR is that? I thought SLS was 8 million pounds and produces 8.8 million pounds of thrust to get you like a 1.1, 1.2 TWR. If it's 5.75 and produces 8 million pounds of thrust, that's like a 6-to-1 TWR. Am I not thinking about that right? I could be doing my math wrong. That's entirely possible. I'll just calculator it out. So 8.8 divided by 5.75. That gives you a 1.53 TWR. Also peak thrust, not launch thrust. Novas, are you telling me this thing's going to zip off the pad with 1.5 TWR? If so, that's going to be a beautiful day. That's going to be a beautiful day if that's how much that thing zips off the pad with. That's going to be beautiful, man. That space shuttle TWR. Yeah. Something I've always wanted to know about you. If you could design a spacecraft, what would it look like? What's the spacecraft supposed to do, Source? Thrust to weight ratio, Zizep. Basically, if your thrust to weight ratio is below 1, you're not going to space. It has to be above 1. The rocket has to be able to produce an accelerated force that is higher than the force of gravity. And weight is gravitational for the acceleration of gravity affecting on a mass. That's what weight is. You have to basically be enough thrust out the bottom of that to counter the force of gravity and then some. Will Vulcan launch at Vandenberg? It will from Slick 3 after the JPSS missions are done. Let's say a lunar transit vehicle with crew. Hey, So, Source, if I was going to design my own spacecraft that, let's say, lunar transit, what is lunar transit? What are we talking? Like, okay, I'm asking you to get more specific because it really depends. It really depends on what you're trying to do. Like, that's the big thing. What's lunar transit? Are you talking about something with the capability of moving humans on a translunar injection trajectory? Or is that what we're talking about here? Or are we talking about something that can go fly by the moon and come back? What are we talking about here? Are we talking about something that can put people on the surface of the moon? Yeah, Source, I don't mean to be vague. Just, you got to be more specific. That's not enough of a good stakeholder expectation to really derive a mission architecture from. Yeah. Yeah, just give me something. Peter, can you do me a favor and just tell us a little more? Oh, yeah. Let me tell you about TPS reports. The shuttle SRBs weighed 1.3 million pounds according to Wikipedia, so SLSs might weigh somewhere in the order of 1.625 million pounds since they're 1.25% the mass with an extra segment. For sure. I was thinking HAB modules on the moon. So you want something that can... Okay, so you want something with access to the lunar surface. Okay, cool. Something that can move stuff to the lunar surface. Let's see.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Is cost a thing here, Source? Hibbit, 38-month resub. SDS 38, the one with the shuttle. Yeah. If liking, you should watch the city's VODs, dude. I go into that in pretty good detail. Yeah, we'll wind down Space News. I didn't get to doing a Starship update. For the people that answer the general questions about Starship right now, November is when they're going to try to do an orbital launch, interestingly enough. Are you familiar with Spaceport America? I've been there, Back Alley. I was there in June. Yeah. I was at the Spaceport America Cup, dude. I streamed launches from there for the Spaceport America Cup. It was awesome. Really fun. I like New Mexico, and Mexico's nice. Except they got COVID. But I don't blame New Mexico for that. Do you think it'll ever be as busy as they envision? It's possible. Really depends. We'd have to stay in a budget, but how much would that be? I'm not sure. Unfortunately, it would have to be a low bid. Okay, so... So we need... You want something that gets us to the surface of the moon, Source, for as inexpensive as possible. Now, I will tell you this straight up, and this is with my limited knowledge of systems engineering, as much as I possibly could tell you. Going to the moon is going to be expensive. It does not matter how you do it. What will ultimately make the cost of going to the moon, no matter what architecture you're using, is doing it a lot. Okay? It doesn't matter if you're using a Saturn V with a fully expendable vehicle, save the capsule, which is also a one-time use. It doesn't matter if you're using a space shuttle and building transfer vehicles in low Earth orbit and then sending that. To build out the architecture needed to basically create a roadway to the surface of the moon, it will always cost, it's always going to cost a certain amount of money. It doesn't matter if SpaceX is doing it. It doesn't matter if NASA is doing it. It doesn't matter how NASA does it. It doesn't matter if the Soviets are doing it. It doesn't matter if anyone does it, China, whomever. It's always going to cost a certain amount of money. The reason why is because, Source, it's because of something called C3. Characteristic energy. It's always going to take the same amount of delta V, and it's always going to take the same amount of energy to get something to the moon. Can't beat physics, dude. That's why. It'll always have a fixed cost. Now, where that price will come down is how often you do it. Right? Why would going to the moon even be beneficial for NASA? Lawnmower... It's beneficial because the technologies that are needed to develop something and to get humans to be able to sustain themselves more on the lunar surface. He said moron. Nice. Basically, if you can live on the moon, you can find more ways to be symbiotic with the environment down here. For instance, if we build a factory on the moon, you can't do something like just pump carbon emissions out into the atmosphere. One, the moon has no atmosphere. Two, that's very wasteful. It's very wasteful because in spaceflight you have to be like the Native Americans. You have to use every part of the animal. Use everything to your advantage. And those systems that we develop up there can help us down here on the surface. I can give you a couple of specific examples. You know, everybody says that a phone, for instance, this thing is way more powerful than the computer, like 1,000,000 times more powerful than the computer that sent people to the moon. Well, that's absolutely true. But what they don't realize is that the Apollo program and going to the moon advanced digital processing to the point where something like this can actually exist. Processors, RAM, stuff like that. you know, like computers, like modern computers as we see fit can all trace their roots back to the Apollo program, dude. That's a pretty good one. I don't know if computers has helped you in your day-to-day life. It's definitely helped me. It gives me a paycheck. And you could sit here and say, oh, come on, it's not just... Dude, it entirely is NASA. They advanced digital processing by about 20 years with the Apollo program. No joke. If you look at, like, computing power in 1965 and computing power in 1975, those are two different things. Way different things. And that paved the way for personal computers in the late 70s, and then the internet in the late 80s, and more internet into the 90s. See what I'm talking about? It's very, dude, we could, so like what are the goals? What are we going to discover by going back to the moon? I don't know. But say we go to the moon and we figure out how to do like fusion on the moon. That could change how we could eliminate our energy needs down here completely. Fossil fuels? Screw that. Fusion power. Am I right? You're going to find new ways to benefit humanity by going to the moon. It's, dude, like I can give, and this isn't some like drink the Kool-Aid stuff either. This is real world applications. Because with engineering, you need to come up with real world applications. We shouldn't just go to the moon because of our hopes and dreams, right? That doesn't make any sense. Exploring technological advances is the big one, dude. Anyway, Source, going back to what you were saying. So, I'm going to develop my own architecture to go to the moon. The invention of the transistor. Yeah, there's also the transistor, but the transistor paved the way for the digital processor. But the digital processor was still a long way off in the 60s. The Draper Laboratory, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and the Draper Laboratory partnered with IBM to make the guidance systems, the Apollo guidance computer, which was basically the first integrated computer as we know by modern standards. Like, I'm telling you, like CPU, RAM, memory. Even though it was rope memory, they had people literally sewing freaking RAM together. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. I mean, that's pretty cool, Lawnmower 2, but that's not the entire reason why we should do it. So, Source, going back to what you were saying here, let me go back. Economy of scale sounds right to you. Bingo. So you'd want something that favors the most launches, right? The most launches, and something that preferably would be rapidly reusable. Now, here's where you start getting into trade-offs. So the two big architectures that I could see that if I was going to design my own space program to go to the moon would be either an all-expendable vehicle or a near full reusable vehicle. What do you want to do? Personally, fully expendable vehicle would be way easier. It would be way easier. It'd be way easier because, well, it's send it one and done. You don't need to worry about recovering anything. You just build another launch vehicle. Is that sustainable in the long run? Could be. Depends. Depends on the political winds, to be honest with you. But once again, we're not talking about, like, oh, is this another Apollo program or something? It's just how I would do it. If I was going to do it, I would probably do something kind of halfway between like the space shuttle and what Starship is doing. I posted something for you in general. Okay. That's nice. You posted something for me in general. Here you go. Yeah. Yeah. Relevant. Yeah. Pretty crazy night, right? Look up TX0, 1956. ISTR was the first transistorized computer. Well, that's cool, Enginuber. But yeah, I mean, I could go read about computer hardware stuff all I want. But, and I'm not saying there weren't, like, transistorized computers or anything before the Apollo program. It's just, it advanced computing power. That is the big one. Our entire modern world nowadays is based off of those advancements made from the Apollo program. Before that, you had a transistor radio and then a transistorized computer that was the size of a freaking house. And before that, you had tubes, and the thing was the size of an apartment block. You gotta go look up pictures of the ENIAC. Right? So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it was the first computer. I'm saying it advanced computing technology. It made, because with spaceflight, you need to make it small and it needs to be light. It needs to be portable, right? PC, portable computer. See what I'm saying? It's not that computers didn't exist before that, but it miniaturized it to the point where you could make it accessible for every person to just have a computer. And that's what Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and Wozniak worked on, amongst other guys. Anyway. Yeah, Furiano, maybe. So, land the expendables, and you might need to you might use it later. So, source, let's see. I honestly, I would say something like Venture Star would probably be what I would end up doing, because I like the reusability of the shuttle, but I don't like the partial reusability of the shuttle. Something like Venture Star would be able to get you access to the moon pretty reasonably. However, that would entirely be dependent on just how reusable Venture Star is. And this is what I mean about zero-sum game, okay? So you have benefits and you have detractors, right? If I wanted to build something like the original space transportation system, that's what the shuttle was envisioned to do. Basically, the shuttle, through rapid launches, will be able to launch up components once every day. Like, the shuttle was designed to basically launch once a week. And, you know, the first week it'll send up a transfer stage. And then the second week it'll send up a HAB module and a lander. And then the third week it'll send up a crew module. And then that basically is the top of the Saturn V. And they'll send that out to the moon. And then it'll bring it back, right? And then the shuttle will, you know, the crew could come back in a capsule. The shuttle would grab the vehicle, right, and bring it back down, and then you could reuse it. That was the idea. That's what they wanted to do with the shuttle. I would do that, but with Venture Star. Now, with Venture Star, you're not building like a 30-story building worth of launch vehicle. With something like Venture Star, you're building an insanely complicated launch vehicle, but it is fully reusable. Now, with the other way, you're building an expendable launch vehicle, but because you have to build a new rocket every time, it basically, you'd have to scale up production. You'd have to work on the factory to be able to crank out rockets fast enough, like what SpaceX is doing, right? If basically, the Saturn V factory would need to be producing an entire Saturn V stack a week, right? And this is what I mean about zero-sum game. So say we did that. Dude, that's what they wanted to do during the Apollo program. That's why there's pictures of like 20 Saturn V's stacked in Michoud, all in a row. Not 20, it's like 5 that are in various stages of production. You need your factory. Now you need to work on manufacturing rockets, and you need to work on being able to manufacture them quickly. You don't necessarily need to do that if you're doing something like Venture Star or the Space Shuttle. Your factory can be a regular factory. It doesn't, it could take a while to make a Venture Star or a Space Shuttle, because that's what makes up for the fact is that the thing is fully reusable. So the thing comes right back down, you land it, you put payload in it, and then you put it right back up on the pad and launch it again, right? Your costs here, source, are shifted. Not from your factory, but they're shifted into the engineering straight up of the vehicle. The vehicle is way more complicated. A reusable vehicle is way more complicated than an expendable vehicle. So, do you choose to mass produce a lot of expendable vehicles, or do you choose to have a low frequency of production but produce more reusable vehicles? The interesting thing about this is that the costs pretty much push. They pretty much push. It's always going to be expensive no matter what you do. So, personally, I like the idea of reuse. So I would favor something like the shuttle or like Venture Star. That's what I would favor. I think that's the better solution. If I was going to build a new way for us to get to the moon, it would be with basically the Space Shuttle. Yeah. The Space Shuttle would just assemble gigantic transfer vehicles up in space. And I would probably have a redundant capability to build something like SLS to move gigantic cargo up into space. Hey, Brian Programmer, thank you very much for the raid. I think I like reusable also. Yeah, Source, but you got to remember that you'd be on a delayed schedule. You'd be on a delayed schedule because in order for that whole lunar architecture to work, you would have to put Venture Star through its paces. And this is what I mean about something halfway between Space Shuttle and halfway between Starship. We would need something that's able to, with a lot of launches and a lot of missions, be able to conclusively prove that it is reusable. It has to be fully reusable. I'm talking land it at the runway, tow the sucker back, put a new payload in, take old payloads out, new payloads in, and be able to move it back to the pad in a week, in less than a week. It has that whole process, the whole ground process thing needs to be able to do it less than a week from mission end to mission start. That is insanely difficult to do. That's what SpaceX is trying to do. SpaceX is trying to be able to launch Starship twice in a day. It is absurdly ridiculous stakeholder expectation, but Elon does that because he's trying to push the boundaries. That's what he does. That's what you can do when you have frick you money, right? So if you're going to do that, right? If you're going to favor reusability, right? If you're going to favor reusability, you're going to have to dump an insane amount of money into your launch vehicle design. And then you're going to have to do a buttload of testing to make sure to prove that it's fully reusable, because you don't want to assemble half of a transfer vehicle up there and then have the propellants boil off from that vehicle, or strand some crew in low Earth orbit because the vehicle blew up on ascent or something, right? You don't want to do that. So that's the downsides of doing that. That's probably what I would try to do to push the envelope. Heck, if I was going to start a small sat launching company right now, I would build a reusable small sat launcher. That would be my investor. I would basically try to build something like X-33 with an aerospike using Methalox instead. And my vehicle would look slightly different than Venture Star. It would kind of be halfway between Venture Star and Suzy, believe it or not. Do you know the turnaround time on an X-37B? It's part of the Air Force's Rapid Response and Launching Program, Mayor, so that the X-37 has to be able to be turned around pretty quick. I would guess it's pretty fast. Only first stage reuse sounds like a good middle ground. Well, Josh, that's why the shuttle was seen as such a good idea, because you do reuse the first stage with the space shuttle, right? You do reuse it. You get your boosters back. You just got to go and tow them out, but you get them back. And it's interesting, dude, because if that's employed in scale, if you do that in scale, it works. The cost will go down, even with partially reusable first stages and fully reusable second stages, right? That actually is a good idea. The shuttle is not a bad way to do things, dudes. Problem with the shuttle is that it wasn't tested enough. That thing, if they wanted to act like an airplane, they should have tested it like an airplane. An airplane, before it moves people in any way, shape, or form, has to have thousands of hours of flight time before it's proven to be able to reliably move people and it has no problems with it. They launched the space shuttle 4 times and said, nope, we're good. Operational missions, let's go. And who knew? It didn't work like an airplane because they didn't test it like one. Funny how that works. What does Suzy look like? It looks like a shuttlecock from badminton. At the same time, are you the good person to ask that? I'm sure if you could make your perfect soccer team, it would be made of 11 space shuttles. Dio, I personally think that the shuttle is a very good idea. The shuttle for a lunar program like that offers you dexterity that you would not get with any other type of vehicle. For instance, let's just look at my desktop. You see that? Can the Saturn V build that? Hell no. Hell no, it can't. Saturn V can't build that. Now, don't get me wrong. The Saturn V could do Skylab and make a bigger space station than this, but it couldn't exactly do that. With the space shuttle, you're afforded very modular architecture. Modularized architecture like that, it makes it easier to build tailored transfer vehicles. The shuttle can build stuff bigger than Skylab. Think about it. You have the robotic arm. You have the the pressurized mating adapters. This offers you dexterity that with the PMAs and the remote manipulator systems and basically the on-orbit crane, the space shuttle can do things the Saturn V would never be able to do unless you somehow put a robotic arm on top of Skylab, which you probably could. They probably could do that. You probably could do that. But you're still never getting the down mass capability that the shuttle has. You'd never have that with Saturn V unless you made a shuttle for the Saturn V, which also wouldn't have been a bad idea. Personally, I think that would have been a pretty cool idea. Do I think it's possible? Yeah, sure, absolutely. Instead of an S2 and an S4B on top of a Saturn V, you have an S1C with an external tank attached to the top and the shuttle on the side. It could work. Why not? It'd be ridiculous, but it could work. That was their early implementations of the shuttle. That's exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted to put the external tank on top of a Saturn V first stage so they could use the same architecture as same mobile launchers, same launch pad, and you guys know how complicated building launch pads can get. Right? That's what they wanted to do. They ended up not doing that because they thought it would be too expensive. It'd be too expensive to expend an S1C every time. Which is funny because even if that's not really the truth. It all comes down to frequency of launch. You have to look at cost of engineering the vehicle and then cost of frequency of flight, right? And engineering the vehicle could be, how those costs are broken down really depends on what you're doing. My understanding is that the shuttle as we had was never supposed to be around for long. With the launch cadence proposed and the launch lifetime expected, if I recall correctly, they wanted to do a redesign with lessons for the Block 2, aka Shuttle 2.0. Shuttle 2.0 is a death trap, more than the original Space Shuttle Aquilux. Yeah, you're not going to change my mind on that one. And I know what people are going to say. Oh, but EJ, it's going to be safer. Safer doesn't... Safer does not mean that. That's not how safer works. They added with Shuttle 2.0, they added all these escape systems and liquid fuel boosters and all this other crap to the design. Okay, you added all this stuff. That's great. That's more things that can go wrong. On top of using shuttle parts, which are already not incredibly reliable to begin with because they didn't test it enough. I will firmly believe that they didn't make Shuttle 2 because Shuttle 2.0 is a death trap. More than the shuttle. There's 1,000 more things that can go wrong in that design. Oh, great, you saved the crew. That's fine. What's the point of the space shuttle? The point of the space shuttle is that it's not like a regular rocket. The whole point of the entire shuttle program was to not build stuff like Shuttle 2.0. It was supposed to basically give us the push that we needed to make rockets more like airplanes. And if you're going to do that, if you're going to try to make rockets more like airplanes, the solution isn't to make your rocket airplane more like a rocket. Does that make sense? It's the same reason why a passenger liner nowadays doesn't have parachutes on it. I say passenger liner like a jet liner, like a 737 or an A320. There's a reason, but they don't have parachutes. They don't have ejector seats. Why? Because the technology is matured enough. That was the whole point of the shuttle. I wish we could figure out an advance like Star Trek. Well, T-Man, be the change you want to see. Figure it the frick out. It's possible. Hands. We already saw this. It's funny you think that they even care one bit about spending tax dollars. They don't care. No, Farm, I disagree. Because by that logic, they would, if the folks like Congress want a jobs program, Apollo was the ultimate jobs program. That gravy train was immense, and a lot of people rode it. The best jobs program would be, by that logic, would be a space program that launches a lot and has an insanely high budget like the Apollo program. That's the ultimate jobs program. And that's why I don't like it when people say, oh, SLS is just a jobs program. Okay, so what was the Saturn V? What was the Apollo program? Was that a jobs program too? It's just a jobs program. And I don't think that's the right way to look at that, dude. You know what I mean? I've always said that SLS needs to launch more, and that will make Congress happy because they get to ride the gravy train even more, which is fine with me. I don't care. You can ride the gravy train as long as you want. As long as we get something out of it, I don't really care. If you really want my honest opinion, you could spend billions of dollars on a lunar program. Send something to the moon, please. Send something to the moon. I think that's pretty fair. From your lunar program, send something to the moon, right? Like, that makes sense. You know, like, I never liked looking at it like that, dude. The problem is freaking the mission overall was terrible because of the circumstances. Anyway, I don't want to go on to some crazy rant about Congress and Constellation. We already talked enough about Constellation today. Your lunar program is going to send something to the moon? Question? Yeah, right. In that case, World War II was the best jobs program the U.S. ever created. Got us out of the Depression pretty quick, didn't it? And the funny thing is that the economy contracted in the late 50s, and nobody ever talks about that. The economy contracted hard because we adjusted back into a relatively civilian economy after World War II, and 57, 58, and 59 had a nasty recession. Not a lot of people know about that. Yeah. Funny story. Would you say a program like the Apollo applications or now the Artemis program would see more benefits if we would start building actual infrastructure on the celestial body we visit, the moon in this very case? Yes, of course. TVA was a jobs program too. Winter Scythe, I've said it once, I'll say it again. And keep in mind, my expertise in this area is limited to cities, but I have no problem with any politician wanting to build more infrastructure. More infrastructure is more equity, and that will bring you more tax dollars. Straight up. Zubrin, Dr. Robert Zubrin has said that Mars is exponentially more easy to live off the land than the moon. So therefore, our first space colony should be tried at living on Mars first. What's your thought on this? I like Zubrin. Zubrin is one of the reasons why I like spaceflight so much. I remember watching him on the Discovery Channel in the 90s and in the 2000s. And I thought he was right. His disdain for how slow the space program was going is one of the reasons why I do what I do. With that being said, I disagree. I disagree. I think we should go to the moon. We should go back to the moon, and we should learn how to do it there. We should learn how to work there. I would agree with him back, Ellie, that the moon is harder to live off the land than Mars. He's absolutely 100% correct. Think about it like this. How long does it take to get to the moon? 3 days. We can get there anytime. We can come home anytime. How long does it take to get to Mars? It takes 3 months for a high energy transfer, meaning the quickest way you can get there, and that launch window comes around one every 26 months for a 3-month transfer. And that's the opportune time. With that being said, if we can practice living on the moon because we can get home at any time and we can live sustainably on the moon, every resource that's available on the moon is available on Mars. Mars is easier. I would contend to say that we should learn to live and work on the moon first. Because if you can live and work on the moon, you can definitely live and work off the land on Mars. Thank you for getting into that. Settled some curiosity. Small sat launchers to fund a large SSTO type craft sounds like a solid strategy. Source, if I had a couple $1 million in the bank, that's what I would be doing right now. I'm not even kidding. I would work. I mean, everybody's working on two-stage small sat launchers. So like Relativity's working on that. You know, Rocket Lab's working on that. Rocket Lab's even moving into reusable vehicles with Neutron. You know, Firefly, they're all working on this. ABL, they're all working on expendable or partially reusable two-stage launch vehicles. A single stage small sat launcher with like an 800 kilogram or 1,000 kilogram sun synchronous, something like that, or even 500 kilograms to 550 kilometer sun synchronous orbit would be pretty competitive in the launch market. But you would need an insane amount of investment because, once again, your vehicle is way more complicated than anything else. But the payout is a lot better if it works. More risk, more reward. That's spaceflight in general. That's spaceflight in a nutshell. Did we ever find out who bought the J2X assembly line? Negative. I don't see people talking about that 6-month trip enough. The radiation seems like a major obstacle that I haven't heard any solution for. Josh, the radiation, from what I understand, is more negligible than one might think. Don't get me wrong, it's something that needs to be addressed, but building a transfer vehicle with an aluminum hull should be able to bounce it sufficiently. We know that from the Apollo program, right? Now, secondly, with that being said, the radiation is, well, a concern. You shouldn't just ignore it. That's probably not a good idea. With that being said, the transfer time is what I'm worried about. You need to make a spacecraft that's operable, in transit, 100% self-sufficient, by itself, no resupply, 3 months. And then after 3 months, you're gonna circularize that thing around Mars and stay there for a year and a half, and then another 3-month transfer and circularization back to Earth. That is an insanely complicated mission. That's insanely complicated. That is way more complicated than going to the moon. Like, way more complicated. Right? That is, dude, imagine all the things that can go wrong. What happens if something like Apollo 13 happens on the way out there? You're not coming back for another 26 months. You're screwed. So, yeah, I mean, Zubrin's right. Mars is easier to land on. But honestly, it's not the living off the land part. You know, it's not the living off the land part that's the difference here. The moon is way closer. Even though it's harder to live off of, it's way closer, and you can practice there. Because if you can live on the moon, you can live on Mars. Simple as that. The 7mm thick water film around the inner casing would decrease radiation down to normal Earth background radiation. Yeah, Alucard, nobody here is going to convince me that having a moderator that absorbs radiation is good for your spacecraft. Why do you guys think that's going to be good? You know your spacecraft is absorbing radiation at that rate. You don't want to absorb radiation in space. That's bad. That is a bad thing. That makes your spacecraft more radioactive, and it stays that way because it absorbed everything. You're literally flying around in an encased nuclear lead-lined ship. That's like, well, not nuclear, it's radioactive on the outside. Why would you do that? What if you need to repair the ship? Then what? What if you need to adjust the solar panels? What are you, EVA out there? Now you're EVA on the outside of the water jacket and you get irradiated more than you already would. I don't think that's a good idea. You want something that bounces radiation, not absorbs it. That's a bad idea. That's not going to end well. What we need is city skylines on the moon. That would be cool. A lunar base building game. That would be pretty sweet. Not maybe to the depth of Stationeers. Hell,